The gods were making it obvious that they'd been waiting for him when he got there that night. The three of them practically staring him down by the time he'd arrived, with the one he gave his faith being the first to speak. "Ben, what job did you take?" It wasn't a question, they needed to know. The amount of experience it required was frankly unexplainable, and word was sure to get out about it eventually when he saw Verbum or the Soul Mages again. It was better they knew sooner than later. "Okay. But first I just want you to remember that I have a very good reason for why I picked it. No stalling, what is it already? World Killer." "Of course it is." Myriad sounded tired more than anything else when he gave the reveal, making Ben feel practically compelled to at least try to explain himself. "When I looked at my options, I wanted to pick a job that would give me the best bonuses across the board that I could get. After feeling how good those Soul Mage bonuses were, how could I not? From the name alone, it seemed like the most likely candidate to give me them." "Maybe so, but the experience cost is frankly terrible," Nair sighed. "No matter how right you were, the requirement is outrageous." "Yeah, so here's the thing. It wasn't what I expected when I took it. I wouldn't call this a third-tier job. I'd say it's a fourth-tier one. Everything it gave me had divine bonuses. That changed the feeling of the realm immediately, with Hellori rushing towards him, already ready to plunge her arms into his chest. "There's no record of any job that powerful ever existing before," she said in her excitement while she touched his soul. Ben just letting it happen in exchange for the more positive energy she was bringing to the realm than had been there only moments before. "What exactly did you get your bonuses to?" "All of my attributes. You won the lottery." "Skills?" "Ahem. My apocalyptic ones." While both Myriad and Nair looked justifiably horrified hearing that, Hellori was still focused on the practical. "Which exactly does that entail?" "A job that good, it had to have leveled every single one that applies. Material manipulation, ill will, aim, hive mind, extraction enhancement, and bite enhancement. It also awakened my intelligence enhancement and gave me the skills destruction inclination and evil inclination." "Of course it did," Myriad muttered, with Hellori not noticing the minor outburst while Nair gave the cube a comforting pat. "And how easy have they been to level since?" she questioned. "I'd assume your awakening intelligence enhancement could have more to do with the attribute bonuses than the skill ones, but at the same time, there's no reason to think having a more powerful mind wouldn't be viewed as something befitting the idea of causing an apocalypse. Personally, I find that more likely than biting things to be applicable. Ensure your favorite authors get the support they deserve. Read this novel on Royal Road. Same and easy would be putting it mildly. Both my new inclinations got up to level 4 today. I didn't even have that easy of a time with soul inclination. I'm pretty sure I'll have them at the 9th in a day or two if I make the effort. Hell, if I just spend the night here thinking about it, then I'll probably get another couple levels to my evil inclination, so honestly I'm going to be doing that." "You know that's not going to look good the next time someone gets a peek at your status," Myriad sighed. "You do know that, right? I mean, look, I'm not exactly thrilled to get a skill with that name either, but there's nothing I can do about it at this point, and whether I like it or not, it's basically going to be raising by itself with the bonuses I have on it. I might as well get it up as fast as possible to take advantage of it for all it's worth. Besides, who's to say what counts as an evil skill anyway? It feels pretty subjective to me. You literally have one called Ill Will. We're ignoring that. I don't even know what the skill does yet. Which reminds me, I need to hunt down Verbum tomorrow." "Okay. Despite the timing of that, I promise I'm not going to hunt the guy for sport." "So then what now?" Nair asked. "How many more levels do you need to finish the job, and how do you possibly plan on getting them?" "Well, as for the first, I only need 5 levels, which actually isn't that bad. If you guys had all hung on for just a couple more minutes, then I might have even been done. As for finishing it, though, I don't know. It's a job I got for destroying planets. The way to acquire experience seems pretty cut and dry to me. Are there any others in this solar system?" "None. That was part of why we all eventually settled on it. Didn't need to worry about any potential neighbors. In that case, there's always the option of borrowing one of our world's newest residents to take me to some barren rock in space. If I do it in the void, materializing antimatter would actually be significantly safer, so I could just fire it off from orbit and let Ogilt zap me away a safe distance before it hits. That would mean immediately violating my goal of avoiding overusing my jacket. But no, that's going to be a last resort, so what else can I do? I doubt I'd get enough experience for any levels just by getting to the second tier of a skill, but it's possible I'd get a level or two by reaching the third, and material manipulation is close. With the only problem being that when I already have a goal of awakening two completely different skills, I don't have time to be trying to think about that too, no matter how crazy the bonuses are for it. So I don't know. I'll give it a couple weeks, and then if I don't get any better ideas, we'll get a little apocalyptic out there. I really don't like that option, Myriad told him. Ignoring the risk to yourself because I don't care how safe it might seem, that's still going to carry a lot of risk. There's other issues to consider too. One of which being that, in an explosion like that, antimatter could easily be blown away afterwards back into space before it can annihilate itself with any standard matter. Even if it probably wouldn't be much, it could still cause plenty of problems for others down the line, especially any void races that could potentially pass by. Okay, that's worth considering. Admittedly, I don't want to be responsible for anyone dying, so I'll keep working on other options until that's the only one left. I'm a little clever sometimes. I'll hopefully think of something. There really is no reason to try and force a solution in the next couple weeks, Ben. A job like that, if you're ever able to finish it, then you can call it a win, and the bonuses you enjoying would make that fact worth it. What can I tell you? I'm an impatient sort. Either way, this is just going to be something in the back of my mind while I focus on other things, so it's yet one more big, impossible goal to go along with the other two. On top of it, I need to get stronger in general, and maybe I'll try and force a few more awakenings now that I got this at least. I can imagine extraction enhancement might awaken into something interesting, and with all of the bonuses on it, that should be easy. Plus, I wouldn't mind awakening any of my inclination skills either, since at least two of them are going to be related to the skills I want getting to the third tier. There might be more to focus on too, but I'll figure that out after bothering Verbum. Plus, I have a buttload of things to figure out if I can make life easier and let me focus on my leveling without having to worry about getting work dropped on me. Okay, this is all fine. Until you burn out. If I'm afraid of that happening, then I'll give myself a single day off to enjoy. For now, though, you guys do your thing. I've got a night of strategizing and evil thoughts ahead of me. The streets of the magic towers were strangely empty, with many of the mages who'd normally be filling the area off fighting and hunting what groups of demons they could, while the ones that remained were on guard even as they walked around, prepared for anything to get through and rain down chaos, with each of them having the responsibility to stop it. A feeling that tainted each of their thoughts as Ben reached out to connect to them in order to test and train his own skills. Given his goals for raising deep connection, using it constantly was a must, and it was seeing the practice, both from how far he was stretching it out to train with the various minds he was touching, but also by taking advantage of his new rings, linking up to them to make and break enchantments across the various bands hanging from his arms. Every time he had the opportunity, he was doing it for what practice and experience he would get, but it served another purpose too, testing the effects of reconstructed alien thought structure and confirming a suspicion he had about the skill. While it had no level attached to it, it still seemed able to grow due to its very nature, with the new minds he touched imprinting on the alien strands within his head, making them more complex from each interaction and ever so slightly growing how he could view the world. It felt strange to go through and stranger to actively observe as it was happening, but he didn't let it worry him. Everything in his head was him, whatever aspects attached to his minds were just as much so, no matter how alien any of them might have ended up being. Not that he was particularly concerned about that. He'd already connected to mana and energy beings, along with forms of life that hadn't evolved on a terrestrial world. The idea that he'd somehow have to worry about encountering anything stronger was basically unreasonable. It would be stranger if he somehow ran into something that didn't fit into any of the categories he'd already encountered. Better to accept himself as he was than worry about how he might hypothetically change still. That was how he made his way to the library, ignoring the side buildings he still needed to explore and instead making his way to the main one, finding it like everywhere else emptier than usual as he made his way to the top floor, finding its usual occupant already there. "Hey Verbum," he said cheerfully, not getting the other to so much as glance away from his book. "So you lived then? I hit a couple unexpected rough patches, but yeah, I lived. Things went well for you. The benefit of having zero combat skills is I have no expectations on me." He shrugged before finally looking over at Ben, seeming to be on the verge of passing out for a second before screaming at him instead. It's only been a month. A very busy month, and shoo, we're still in a library. How could so much possibly change in a single month? Man, I keep having to tell this story. Okay, let me get comfortable first. He took a seat across from him before giving the Pleiadian the rundown on his last month, the other looking sick by the end of it. You have the worst luck in reality. No such thing, I have it on good authority. How did you manage to attach yourself to the only god that the demons would want to grab you for? The odds are never in my favor is all. That's called bad luck. Regardless, now that you know, I'm looking to get your help. I've got this fancy new blessing bound to my soul which just so happens to have come from what is likely the only demon god. I was hoping you'd be able to pull some info on it for me. If you discover this narrative on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen. Please report the violation. The request got him a look that screamed Verbum was thinking he was an idiot. Do you have any idea how much information the system is going to pull for such an ancient being? Ancient and powerful, I might add. This stupid thing rules over how many worlds? You're talking about years of reading mostly garbage before striking any nuggets of useful info. There's only a few points I want you to narrow in on, Ben clarified. Why the demons invade the way they do and what Own is the god of specifically. I know I'm probably not getting anything else that would be useful. Fine. Since that's still probably going to take ages, let's just get started already. Fantastic, thanks. Connecting to the other, Ben also used one of the original aspects of hive mind before it awakened, speeding up Verbum's thoughts to let his fellow summons scroll through the information he was seeing faster since Ben's reading speed had only grown with his thought speed and unnatural mind both having raised so much. He could get through so much more, the only thing was making sure the information supplier could keep up, beginning his hours of reading. Hours of reading with no satisfying conclusion, a fact that was leaving Ben to grind his teeth. When looking for why the demon god arranged each invasion like that, the answer seemed to be to get stronger without the context to explain that in more detail, and when looking for what that god specifically ruled over, it spat out the oh-so-useless answer of everything, something that no god could possibly be. So let's think through this. He thought with a sigh as he pinched his brow. If the goal is to get the demons stronger, then maybe this kind of makes sense. Plenty of people hone their skills through combat. Maybe the weakest demons are sent through to hone themselves against the masses, and the second wave go through to train themselves against anyone strong enough to survive the first, and the third get to train themselves against anyone strong enough to last through the first two. It's not the most satisfying answer given the sheer volume of demons that still die during all of that. It absolutely speaks of a god that doesn't give a crap about their believers, but given the race as a whole, that wouldn't exactly be surprising, would it? I'm not sure how I'd go about clarifying beyond that, so let's focus on the second question. There can't be a god of everything. All of the natural gods within this universe rule over 2 or 3 concepts, so the system has to be taking into account how much power Own has when giving that answer. With that much divinity, it doesn't matter what he's technically a god of. He really would be able to do anything, so let's try and narrow that down a bit more. Verbum, we're going to adjust the second question. We're not looking for what Own is the god of, we're looking at what he was originally the god of. A question that led to more hours of reading, but at least one that led to a straightforward answer, leaving Ben with the 2 concepts that overwhelming god ruled over. Souls and survival. The answer brought a deep frown to Ben's face that he couldn't suppress, even if it made too much sense to deny. The races gods ruled would sometimes take on traits related to their gods, such as the succubi or dryads, with both of those traits applying to demons perfectly. He'd already been guessing souls was one, even if having it confirmed continued to be bad news, but survival made sense too. Demons were quick to heal, but more importantly, they were adaptable. Within a single generation, there could be radically different body structures, with examples to be found living in land, sky, sea, and deep underground as well, with them able to develop unique physical traits such as the ones he'd fought in the past that had been able to shoot at him with their modified scales. If the principles of his original world applied where life was a battle for survival of the fittest, then the demons stood at the top of a mountain of corpses without question, existing as one of the pinnacles of life in reality and proving it with every world they claimed. Really, the only evidence to the contrary was their inability to exist in harmony with the worlds they inhabited, leaving them barren in their desire for violence and bloodshed, but the fact that they were still even then able to survive on them served as only more proof to the point. The universe had birthed a god who'd created what could easily be called a nearly perfect form of life, but was cruel enough that the god it brought forth held no value for anything else in reality sharing that same struggle for survival. Still, he'd gotten the information he'd wanted, so he waved Verbum to stop, the other looking just as tired from the ordeal. So did you get what you wanted then? Are you finally done? Sort of and sort of. I at least got some info to tell the gods about later, but I'm not sure how useful it will be to any of them, and I want to keep you just slightly longer. Rotten Earth, why? I've got just a couple skills I want to look deeper into, and it just so happens that you're the guys to help me do it. Not even trying to put up a fight, Verbum did as he asked, the two continuing their reading until deep into the night. So that's what I learned about Own, Ben told his god that night, sharing the realm with Myriad alone. You've got my theories, but it's admittedly not a lot either. Going to be honest though, it's not thrilling. How do you kill a god of survival? Feels like an oxymoron, doesn't it? It's not exactly good news, but I'll pass it on to the others for whatever it's worth. Good work, Ben. Now tell me, after having come here without a single positive thing to say about what you've found about the demons, why the hell are you grinning so much? Am I? He asked, touching his cheeks and feeling them pulled back. Well, I guess I just got a bit of pretty cool news is all. Oh Myriad, I take back my previous anger over the whole flavor enhancement thing. I love the system and the skills it gives me with my whole heart. I'd make a statue in its honor if I knew what it looked like. Spit it out already. What horrific skills did you end with this time? I just learned a bit more about a few I've gained is all. Ill will, modifier compatibility, and defiler of ambrosia. And? Stop being coy and just tell me so I can stop worrying already. Fine. The first looks like it's a buffing type skill, enhancing my attributes when I, am feeling some ill will for something or someone, which is pretty cool. I personally wouldn't describe it that way, but go on. Fine, the second, modifier compatibility, is even better than I'd originally thought. At first, I'd thought it might just strengthen job effects. Honestly, that would have been good enough as is and would explain why I got so many levels after getting that, but it's even better. It strengthens all of my modifiers in general. Meaning my jobs, titles, blessings, and even inclinations. Not my enhancement skills, but that doesn't matter. With everything else I'm getting from it, I really am going to be able to grow so much more. This is probably the single greatest thing to ever end up on my status, and it's not even close. The levels of power this is going to let me achieve if I live long enough is out of this world. He left a pause for his god to comment on that, but got nothing, Myriad staying silent in a way that Ben took as a sign to explain the last one. Finally, we've got Defiler of Ambrosia. Not going to lie, I was actually able to guess its effect when I got it and am more than a little proud about that. It also looks like the system has a sense of humor, buddy. I'm now able to get stronger by eating the food of the gods. Made of the gods, to be specific. Myriad finally crashed down at that, breaking his silence with a weak question. Explain that. I'll know for sure when it's time for my next strengthening potion, but I suspect it would give me more points for drinking it than the 3 I was already getting. Looking forward to seeing how much. There is one thing I want to test too. Don't say it. Obviously, I need to take a bite out of a god. I told you not to say it, Myriad cried, knowing exactly where his apostle was going after explaining the skill. Why, Ben? Why are you like this? Don't blame me. Blame the system for giving me such incredible skills. No, I'm blaming you. You know exactly how this works. The system doesn't give you skills. It helps develop and give structure to what's already forming in your soul. This is 100% on you for the life you've led. Do you even know the acquisition conditions among everything else? If you find this story on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen. Please report the infringement. Ill will needs a high level of sacrilege, modifier compatibility I'm less sure of, but requires a buttload of modifiers, with one likely needing to be an advanced soul job, and Defiler needs someone who's consumed a lot of products associated with gods on top of having an awakened sacrilege. There may be more for all of them or some nuance I'm missing, but you know how it is trying to pull information through Verbum's skill. I'm honestly lucky I was able to get as much as I did today. What's up? Aside from my overwhelming despair about the sheer existence of one of those skills? Unfortunately, if I'm going to be honest, the fact that all of that means you won't be able to share either of them with Zandale to teach others. His God side. As much as I hate to admit it, both would be exceptionally useful to spread around a bit. Welp, you win some, you lose some. Now about that little bit I wanted to test dash. No, we're not done. Ben, who have you told about this? So far? Just you. With the other two gods he would have mentioned it too busy and Thera asleep by the time he'd gotten back. Myriad was the only one he'd had to share that news with his god looking deeply relieved to hear that at least. That makes things easy. Ben, I'm telling you now, don't tell anyone about those skills if you can help it. Not Hellori and Nair. Not your girlfriend. Don't even talk to me about them if there's a chance anyone else might come along. Can I ask why? I can admittedly get why you might not want word about Defiler of Ambrosia spreading, but modifier compatibility really is harmless both in function and acquisition. What's the issue? I can only imagine how much issue knowledge of those skills could cause down the line. Myriad groaned just thinking about it. Ben, enough gods either don't like you or are cautious of you that information about modifier compatibility getting out could make any of them significantly more hesitant to help you in the future when combined with some of the jobs you've taken. Plenty are worried about you raising your sacrilege and you obviously keep trying to awaken it. That's enough for some to want to actively stop you. Your Defiler skill goes without saying. How many gods do you think want to be looked at like a fine meal? If anyone ever asks, just make something up or say you don't know. Okay, if you're that worried then fine, but speaking of gods and fine meals, I am not letting you try to eat me. You aren't asking Hellori or Nair to let you take a bite out of them either. Not what I'm thinking. I happen to remember that a certain god managed to make a fortune of faith gambling on my survival while I was stuck in the dead god's trial. Much of which ended up spent trying to raise your job level with everyone else, yes. Why, what's your point? Please, I know how cheap gods are. There's no way you lot would have spent enough to take a hit that would leave you impoverished, so spend a little on me. Go ask Jagal if you can buy one of her fruits from her and we can see here and now how much Defiler is going to affect what I get from it. I really don't want to. Please? Pretty please? That way you'll be able to see if I really will get a bit more from chowing down on the divine instead of just my potions. Just think of the sense of peace you'll get if we test it and it turns out I'm wrong. Wouldn't that feel good? Wouldn't that make buying me 5 extra points of mana totally worth it? I can tell you really don't think you're wrong. Sure, but if we don't do it now, then we'll both have to wait a few days until I down my next potion. Do you really think you'll be able to handle the suspense? The feeling of fear or anticipation over what the result will be? Each day worse and worse as the agony of not knowing eats at you. You deserved that. My point still stands. So? Fine. Give me a minute, you greedy little jerk. His god vanished at that, leaving him alone in the realm for a few minutes to practice his actualizing before making his return with good news to be had. We're in luck. It looks like despite your stunt grabbing so much experience from all of us and how you then forced everyone to level your lover, Jagal still manages to hold some gratitude to you for making her new statues for all of the communal churches along with the resources you've been sending to Delaire's village. She's giving it to you for free. He lobbed the fruit over to Ben to catch and examine, looking at it through the lens of his sacrilege out of curiosity before biting into it and savoring the flavor for all it was worth, trying to experience any hidden depths it might offer so he might at least replicate the taste with the thanks of his actualization before finishing it with a satisfied look on his face, both for the snack and whatever growth would come from it. Okay, so in theory this should give me 5 extra points to my mana. Now all to do is wait and see what I wake up with tomorrow. I can only hope for a result that isn't going to lead you to wanting to take a piece out of every god you see. 10 points to my mana baby. Freaking double what I was expecting. Oh hush you, it's fine. It's not like I'll get the chance to try it from any other god anyway. Sadly, not many of them seem to bear fruit. Your distrust really does hurt so much, but fine. Now, important question for you, what's Sakhel up to? And then when does she start returning to Stonewall? Gonna get her help with something. Tell her to meet me at the All Faith Gate instead. Relax, it won't be anything bad. Now, since my plans for tomorrow and maybe a few days after too are all sorted out, it's time for me to focus on some work in the shop. I've still got a lot of things to test and make. They were still staying in Analia out of convenience for Thera at the time, letting her have somewhere relatively close to where she was working to sleep without having to give in to more nights in the hospital staff bedding. But with the shop only a step away, he was able to get to work making one of many ideas into reality. Slipping on his jacket after having left it there because of his promise to himself, he immediately began filling his soul for everything he intended to try and make while practicing some of his other abilities at the same time. With the core skills he intended to enchant with all being held within his own status as he sought to correct two issues. The first was out of a desire to decrease his potential workload. He already knew that enough gods didn't really want to rely on him if they could help it given his greed, and for once he intended to satisfy their desires, even if it meant sacrificing his teacher in the process. While Ben had many strengths, but when it came to the war effort, the greatest one was the sheer volume he was able to create compared to other people. His was a level of production that could only be matched by entire teams of workers, and no group on the planet could consistently pull off his quality. Of course, it had gotten easier recently thanks to Falk creating an entire factory able to enchant weapons to increase the raw power they could put out, but now that they'd passed the second wave with a third sure to come, he was expecting a lot more to be thrown his way. With what had already been done, it was nearly certain that anyone across the world could get their hands on a weapon of a previously incomparable quality, but with the masses covered, the chances of the divine wanting something even better for those they viewed as having the most potential was a practical certainty. He was sure that the third-tier skill holders and various contenders were likely getting their hands on some of the world's few mythic items and whatever legendary ones various nations had been hoarding over the centuries, but they were always going to want more. And with the number of awakened skill holders having exploded thanks to his own efforts, it was practically a certainty that they'd be coming to him to make all of the legendary weapons he could produce. Normally that would have been something he'd welcome too. He'd been focused on quantity for too long. Having a year to devote himself to seeing what sort of quality he'd be able to pull off was a dream, but it would take far too much of his time. Better to outsource where he could, and with that goal in mind began enchanting on a handful of circlets, blending together aspects of unnatural mind, hive mind, knowledge, unnatural inspiration, and most important of all, deep connection, weaving them together into a thick tapestry of power that threatened to break the delicate rings of metal it was all placed on but holding in the end, leaving only the issue of testing which would have to come later. With that done about as much as he could hope, he moved on to another project, something that he alone in the world would be able to produce in an effort to deal with another problem, the limitations of mages across the world. If you discover this tale on Amazon, be aware that it has been unlawfully taken from Royal Road. Please report it. It was something he'd noticed on the battlefield too during his brief time as part of it, but mages were constantly having to choose between smaller spells that would allow them to fire off at a constant rate or big, grand spells that would do more damage but drain them in a way that they'd need to wait before casting again, with the limiting factor being the size of any of their mana pools. A limiting factor which was all the harder to escape. Anyone could work to increase their mana through both constant practice as well as taking and finishing jobs, but it still took time and they were beyond being able to spare anything for simple practice. The spells any mage would use were going to be for combat in one way or another, and while that would be experience in and of itself, they were all lacking the time to really capitalize off that fact. No, they all needed more mana, and far sooner than any of them would be able to pull off to improve the world's odds and lower casualty rates, and he had a design that would hopefully make it happen. And if I'm going to try and make it, it would be best to push myself a bit to do it, right? Feeling the design of the item and enchantments solidified in his mind, Ben forced his will on the world as he gave structure to what he envisioned, ending with a jewel-encrusted bracelet. 10 rainbow mana crystals fitted around it with the entire structure covered in enchantments. Ben had once more been able to apply deep connection to it while he'd worked that day, leaving the only thing left being to test to see if his idea would work. Draining almost all of his mana, Ben slipped on the new bracelet he'd made and activated the enchantments, feeling them work as intended as what one of the crystals held. The soul within it had its mana pulled into him instead, topping Ben up exactly as he'd hoped. It was technically a little worse than he'd expected. While he'd designed it in a way that would let anyone recharge their mana from the 10 crystals before they'd need to wait for those imprisoned souls to refill as well, The total volume anyone could hold was still the same as it had been before he'd awakened the skill, meaning he was still only making souls with a mana volume equal to half of his own. It was a disappointing discovery, but one that would hopefully change if he leveled the skill some more, and more importantly, would be plenty for any average mage. Now that he had over 2,000 points of the stuff within his status, any mage he gave one of those bracelets to would be able to access over 10,000 points of mana, more power than any normal person would ever get to experience, and was sure to make a huge difference in the way coming battles would be fought. Which means even though my first project for the day was aimed at reducing my workload, I've immediately undone it by creating something only I can make. Oh well, I'll just have to pump these out as I go, although now that I look at it, it is missing a little something. By all accounts the band was beautiful, but considering he'd created something that would create a definitive shift in how the war was fought, it was missing a little something. A certain special touch that almost needed to be added if it was going to end up in the hands of nearly every mage on the planet, and with the next one he created, he gave it exactly that, with a certain phrase imprinted onto the band. Brought to you by the Church of Myriad. There, let nobody question who they should be grateful to for getting this, and let my God reap some faith for my work. That should show him what a good little apostle I am. Now, without further ado, he knew that he'd be needing to make hundreds of thousands of them at various sizes, and with that having been one of his main projects for the day, he got to work materializing more, straining his soul as he made dozens at a time in a constant cycle of filling and emptying his mana pool, all while the day went on. Walking into the hospital, Thera had been slaving away at that evening, getting strange looks from the receptionist along with a few of the less critical patients waiting at the front from the large sack he was carrying over his shoulder. Ben went to the front with a smile, ignoring the rest around him as he did. Hello there. I'm looking for Thera as well as your director, please. We aren't currently setting up appointments. As you can see, things are busy here, so if it isn't an emergency, please head to one of the local clinics. Okay. Fair. I should have expected that response. Just 1 second. He pulled out his card and hid nearly all of the information on it save his status as an apostle and slid it over to be looked at before he went on. It's kind of important. Thera knows who I am, so if you tell her Ben's looking for her, she'll come out, and I need the person in charge if I'm going to help this hospital at all, so if you'd please. That got his desired outcome, with the receptionist running off to grab them both, leaving Ben to wait for only a few minutes before everyone he was looking for came rushing out, the concerned look on Thera's face dropping when she saw the positive one he was wearing. Not an emergency then? She asked with a sigh as he shook his head. Nope. Good news, actually, along with the fact that you're going to need a few days off. Ben, you know I can't do that right now. We'd be drowning without her. The director spoke up, not wanting to lose their best healer for any length of time for all of the extra work it would create, as well as the lives that would be lost in the process. And I come with a solution to that. How many healers do you have working here? 52 currently. Why? Less than I'd thought. Okay, 1 second. From his ring, he pulled 52 of his new bracelets before handing them over to the woman in charge, who looked at them blankly, not understanding what they were supposed to solve for her until Ben explained. Put one on and activate an enchantment on one of the crystals, and it will refill your mana, he told her. It won't be the most comfortable, and it will kill your growth rates for the attribute, but it will let you use more powerful spells without taking breaks. Brought to you by the Church of Myriad itself. Give one to everyone you work with, and just let them know that once one crystal empties, it will take about 10 minutes to refill. Will that be good enough to make up for losing Thera? Honestly, no, the director told him after a second's thought, even if she desperately wanted to have such a tool for everyone anyway. A mage of her power, no matter how useful this will be, it won't stack up to how much she can manage. The workload is still only going to go up. In that case, what if we distributed more around then? How many do you have? About 10,000. I can't help but feel like something like this should have been distributed earlier. There's no helping it, Ben shrugged. I only invented them today. What? Moving on. You'll all have to overwork yourselves a bit today, but if I make sure these are distributed to every major hospital, then that should immediately ease your burdens. Right? I suppose if you can manage that, then yes, things will become considerably easier. Sweet. Then I'm going to take Thera and I'll have her back to you in a couple days. We'll make sure the rest of these are distributed by tonight, so just do your best. He was already dragging Thera off as he said it, not sparing a glance back while she was left to process that back and forth before ultimately giving in to whatever he needed her for. So what's the plan? It looks like it starts with me dropping the rest of these off with Valeria in Analia to let her handle distribution to keep me from being a liar, and then from there we're finding your dear uncle so I can experiment on him. It's going to be great. This book was originally published on Royal Road. Check it out there for the real experience. Yeah, sure, that might as well happen. Too tired to argue, Thera ultimately accepted that she'd just have to wait and see wherever Ben's mind was going as they ran around to get their first tasks done. After dropping everything off with Myriad's High Priestess and explaining both what the bracelets did and how they needed to be distributed before suggesting she get help from both the local communal church along with Analia's church when it came to sending everything out, the two of them left to find Falk, trying the only place they could think before Ben resorted to divine intervention, going to his factory in the Magic Towers to search him out and getting immediate success for the attempt. After a bit of work getting in which forced Ben to show guards stationed at the front both his status as an apostle as well his awakened crafting and enchanting, they were able to make their way through and see the Yeti working at the side, deep in his projects, while the staff around him focused on both supplying his needs and getting weapons that had been sent in enchanted for future use, with the entire building a flurry of movement while people rushed around to get work done. Falk, take a break to enjoy our company after suffering so long without, Ben called out, pulling the Yeti's eyes away from his work and bringing a tired smile to his face. Ah, you're both safe. Good. He sighed before walking over and pulling the two into a hug. I hear a few of the points had a fair bit of trouble. It didn't affect either of you, I hope? That's a long and complicated story I'll fill you in on some other time. Instead, rejoice, Falk. Your wonderful apprentice has come to make your day worse. Gods above. What are you going to do now? I need to test something and it just so happens that you're my man for the job. It's going to have the minor problem of drastically increasing your workload, but it will be worth it, I promise. Anyway, let's all just step outside for a minute. Not giving them room to argue, Ben was already dragging the two along, looking for a semi-private area with some loose dirt to take advantage of before giving up and pulling them to the gate network instead to go out into the untamed lands for all of the biomass that was available to be used. It wasn't exactly private. The other side of the gate was swarmed with adventurers there to protect it, given that it was one of the few locations not within a city that demons could use to slip through, but that didn't matter. Walking a bit off to the side, Ben emptied the contents of both the mystery sack he'd been carrying as well as two of his rings, piling up meat on the ground, with Thera partially getting a picture of where things were going. Ben, just how many homunculi are you expecting me to make for you this time? For me? Technically none. For Falk, though? Around 10 if you can ration the stuff I have here and make up for what's missing using the surrounding dirt and plants. Though if you can't manage that, don't worry. We can make the rest another day. Where exactly is this going, boy? His teacher questioned. Don't tell me you plan on having me work like you. Right, you are Falk. I've hopefully made something that will let you manage it, but I just need to test it out. So without further ado, he materialized a knife and handed it off to Thera, with both her and her uncle looking between it and Ben's hopeful eyes before giving in. Drawing blood and altering it let it take in more from its environment, with both Thera's new levels and the jobs she'd sped through improving her ability to do it, leaving one homunculi done in only a few minutes. You've gotten really good at this? Ben told her happily as he rushed over, shoving one circlet on its head before handing the other to Falk. Now all to see is if my design worked, so if you would? Still hesitant, the Yeti carefully took the item his student was handing him, looking it over for a second before slipping it on his head and immediately swearing. Damnable boy! What the hell is this thing doing to my head? Splitting your mind in 10 since you'd need at least that many, and the good news is that it looks like it worked. Man, I really am so good at everything I do. When his teacher had moved to grab his head in response to the change forced on him, the clone did the same, matching Falk's actions in a way that told them they'd been properly linked, with Ben nodding in satisfaction. You're going to have about 8 meters of distance you can use that with in any direction, so that's plenty of room to take advantage of, even once we got the others made for you, so for now just try and get used to the experience while you can. And am I ever going to get a real reason why you're doing this, boy? If I'm being honest, there's a lot I'm going to try to be doing before the next wave, and it would be inconvenient if the gods came to me to handle too much work. I already know they'd rather approach you about anything if they can help it, so making it so you can make more at any given time will fulfill both of our goals. Sorry. I really am dumping this on you for my own convenience. Well, it's fine, I suppose, Fox said in the end. I do intend to play my part as well, so I'll take it, though I'm not sure how much more time you'll buy yourself after making something like this. What do you mean? The ability to use something like this wouldn't only be helpful to me or you, his teacher pointed out. You might not be able to use mana through these things, so it's not the most handy for mages, but I can imagine these being useful for any awakened fighters, both for slaying more demons and letting them grow their skills. Damn it, that's a very good point. Okay, I'll bring it up later and we can all see how much ends up getting dumped on us. For now though, let's finish you up and then I'm calling it a day. Tomorrow's going to be a busy one, and I don't think Thera's gotten to sleep properly in a month. I'll take whatever I can get, she happily agreed. After all of the efforts she'd been putting in for weeks, any rest was practically a blessing, even if she wasn't ready to let things end there. But then what's on the agenda for tomorrow? If I succeed, growing even more powerful. Honestly, I'm not super confident if what I'm thinking will work, but there's only one way of testing it out, and if it works, well, then it will give me a completely different path to power to pursue. Okay, I can't deny it. I'm getting excited. Tomorrow can't come fast enough. There's already gods requesting you make more of those bracelets, Myriad told him that night. By the way, thanks for the advertising. Thought you would like that and will do. I'm slowly filling up my spatial rings when I have the spare mana for it, and when I'm in the shop I can make a hell of a lot more at once. I'll be busy for the next couple days, but after that, I'll be making as many as I can in my spare time. Also, I made something completely different that Fox suggested I should probably get spread to the awakened warriors of the world at least, a way to use multiple bodies. It requires my tools and some homunculi which Thera can manage. Do you think you can spread that around up here to get something organized and then we can discuss payment? After how much you've just taken for yourself and your girlfriend, you're still concerned about getting more? Yes? Why wouldn't I be? A general sense of shame, perhaps? Never heard of it. Anyway, I was thinking they could reward me with 5 measly job levels dash. There's no conceivable way that's happening. Lame. On the plus side, I do have one idea. If I take making an achievement in your name, I'll get those levels after completing the quest, right? I'd say creating those bracelets should qualify, and even though I've given plenty out, with the amount it looks like I'm going to be handing out, your fame is only going to spread, so dash. Ben, I am begging you not to do that to me. How badly do I need to debase myself to convince you not to rip away every drop of faith to my name, just so you can finish that job? Oh, come on, it wouldn't be that bad. It would actually be worse. I'm pretty sure I'd go into debt. Raising a first or second tier job is one thing, but I wouldn't even want you trying to do that to me with a third tier one, let alone the horrific thing you've currently ended up with. Ugh. Lame but fine. Back to the drawing board. For now then, it looks like I've managed to both increase and decrease my workload, but there's no denying that I've made the world safer in just one go, so if I'm making and spreading more of my work, then what do you think would be an appropriate reward to ask for? I genuinely feel like somebody should be giving me their blessing just out of principle at this point. Why the hell was the demon's god less of a tight ass about it than the rest of you? The rest of us aren't gods of souls collecting a galaxy's worth of faith. Giving you that probably cost him close to nothing. Boo, even if that's true, I deserve some appreciation for all I do here from the gods that actually benefit from it. I've put in so much effort and have literally changed the world more than once with my creations and discoveries. If there's anyone who deserves more blessings, then it's me. Yet complaining about it won't change things. Ugh. I know, if I want them then I just have to grab them with my own 2 hands. In that case, what do you think would be an appropriate reward to ask for? Given that money won't mean anything if we're all dead, the rest here are pretty willing to be generous with that. I am so disgustingly, filthy rich already, Myriad. Like, if I wanted to, I'd never have to work again. I could hire staff to look after all of my needs for a dozen lifetimes and still have wealth left over. What the hell am I going to do with more money? Then what would you want? I'm going to tell you right now. I wouldn't expect the gods to spend any more power on you after the last time, so pick a resource or something. Do I still have no chance of getting to enjoy all of the forbidden books in the library's basement either? You already know the answer to that. God, I hate this world so much. Okay, give me a minute. With everything he could desire being shot down, Ben considered his various goals. He still wanted to get through the summoning spell and the mystery one and felt like he was making good progress, even more so since awakening alien thought structure now that he had so many new ways of approaching it, but he didn't think the gods would be able to help him on that front. The narrative has been taken without permission. Report any sightings. Likewise, he still wanted to fix Inex but wouldn't be able to expect much help from that either, with the gods already being clear that they didn't know how he was made to begin with, meaning they'd be useless on that front too. Other than that, what he wanted could be summed up simply as power, but he knew they weren't going to give him any as a reward. Whatever he wanted was stuff he'd have to get for himself, but he could ask for something that might help him on that path, with an idea finally coming to mind. I want to see the mythic items of the world, he finally told his god. Even if raising my crafting isn't a priority, it's not like it would hurt and this would cost them all nothing. I refuse to get more reasonable than this. I don't actually see a reason they decline other than stubbornness for some of them, Myriad said after a second's thought. I'll bring it up later. Okay. Sounds like a plan and a half, so don't let me down here. Not the best reward, but also far from the worst. It was something he could be satisfied with while they continued on talking for the night before finally awakening to the day ahead. Letting Thera sleep just a little longer, Ben quickly ran through Stonewall for the only thing he'd need for their outing before coming back to wake her up for the two to go through the gate to All Faith, finding the exact party he'd wanted to see there and at the ready for them. Full house this time, huh? Ben commented as he nodded at Sko, with Raylia chuckling from it. Someone decided they didn't want to risk missing out on whatever you might be doing again. If I'd known, I would have come last time, the four-armed man shot back. Can you blame me for avoiding it? Usually he's planning something horrifying instead of helpful. That's the coin flip you get with me, but luckily for you all, if things work out today, this is landing squarely on helpful. Awkwardly though, I only need Sakhel for the rest of you to reap the benefits. I mean, I guess you guys can come along, but it's going to be pretty dull for the most part. It was going to be a few days getting home anyway, Raylia shrugged. We'd rather not split the party. And so what do you need me to do? The Oracle asked him. Myriad said you were being vague. Don't worry, I just need to take advantage of your specialty. You've got a day of casting plant spells ahead of you to look forward to. It's going to be great. Come on. Without waiting, Ben was already leading them through another gate and walking down the street until he found exactly what he'd been looking for. In a city far from any of the invasion points sat a small store he'd only been able to find after pestering his god to help, with a dryad hybrid running the empty shop by herself. There was no real helping that though, in times of war, her wares weren't going to be flying off the shelves, which left the woman nothing to do until they'd walked in, perking her up with their presence as her eyes were drawn to Sakhel, who was already looking around in wonder at what was being sold, namely seeds of all kinds. Welcome, the woman said brightly, a picture of professionalism the second it looked like customers had arrived. How might I help you today? I've got a list I'm looking for, Ben told her, handing over a sheet of paper with the names of over 100 different plants on it, with the woman reading it all over before flicking her eyes back to him. Alchemist, among other things, but admittedly all of this is going towards potions. Some of these are poisonous instead of medicinal. Only if you don't use them right. Well, I suppose you'd know how you need to use them. And do you need them grown? This might take a couple days, but it shouldn't be hard to get them started for you. Thanks, but I've brought my own plant mage along. In that case, just give me a minute. And will there be anything else? He was going to say he was good with that, but noticed the shop owner's eyes looking behind him to Sakhel, who seemed to have forgotten that she'd been dragged there to help as she instead was busy looking around, reading signs and descriptors for various plants as she went while obviously trying to figure out what she wanted for herself. Sakhel, just get whatever you want. It's my treat. Oh no, I couldn't dash. I'm going to be working you to the bone after this, and we still have one other stop that's going to be pretty difficult, so this is me paying you back. Get whatever and we'll get going. But Dash. Okay, let's make this easy on all of us. He sighed as he cut off the back and forth to instead focus on the shop owner. On top of my own order, 2 packs of every other seed you have available, please. Ben. I want to get everything I need to done today too, so if you're trying to decide between anything, it's easier to just get it all. We're all going to have a lot of work ahead of us here, and if things don't finish fast enough, then you're not sleeping tonight. Okay. If you're going to put it that way, then I'll accept. It only took one look at her to tell she was thrilled with the payout, even if her party was beginning to look more concerned about whatever work he had that was going to take so long. Not that it mattered. After leaving the shop's owner very happy at just how many rare and expensive seeds she'd just sold, that left their last place to visit before getting to work, with all of them looking at him expectantly as he spoke up. Okay, now that that's done, it's off to Satchel's home village. I need to somehow talk Heltath into briefly letting me borrow one of her trees. My grandmother is never going to accept that, Satchel instantly told him, even without knowing what his reason behind it was. I'm sorry, Ben. I can try to talk her into it if you have a good reason, but even then I honestly can't imagine I'd be able to convince her. Well, we've just got to try, he shrugged. So anyway, off we go. He'd already started walking, but Satchel kept up at his side. Can you at least explain why you'd need that? Didn't I already? No. I'm trying to improve the effects of the strengthening potions I've created, he admitted. I've got a lot of ideas and theories on what might work, but I've got to put them to the test, and since I'm already using some wood from your family's groves to do it, that's an area I can improve on too. Oh, she's really not going to like that. If I can't convince her, then that's life, he sighed. But I really do have to try. I understand her concerns about what's going to happen to your people if your woods start being viewed as nothing but materials again, but that's really the sort of worries you get to have when the world isn't ending. Right now, though, I need to chase down every avenue I can to improve our odds, and this is one of them. The current strengthening potions he would make were derived from a recipe using the corpses of gods, something that existed in too small of a supply for anyone to really experiment with, but using the fruits of his possessed tree turned that into another matter entirely. There was no reason he couldn't experiment with dozens or hundreds of recipes until he figured out something better, with the goal of increasing their potency by at least a few points, both for the world as well as himself. Assuming the effects of Defiler of Ambrosia held true for his potions, the 3 points anyone else would get per bottle would mean 6 points for him, and any increase he could manage would double as well. It was a temptation impossible to resist, even if his results left him with something only a single point better than what he could already create. Any extra would add up in the months to come. What mattered was getting every point of power he could in the time he had left, and he continued to think on just what might get him there as they passed through the gate to a different city before Thera lifted the earth beneath their feet to get them out to that distant village. For whatever negotiations would follow, Ben took in the sight of the village after they landed, feeling his heart swell with pride at the most obvious change. It seemed his young apprentice-to-be had been busy, since unlike the last time he'd been there, he could already see a few new sheds standing by each house bearing the signs of her handiwork, telling him exactly how much effort she'd been putting in during her training. Better say hi while I'm here too so I don't hurt her feelings. I'll stop by later after I'm done talking with Heltath. That was his intent at least, but it seemed he had little choice in the matter of how that would work out. It was only a few minutes after walking through the village that he heard his name being called and felt a small body throwing itself at his back while he laughed. Ben! Dallaire cheered. What are you doing here? Ha! I had to come see your grandma. Great-grandma? Heltath, don't worry about it. How did you find me so quickly? You don't have some tracking skill locked onto me, do you? I saw you after finishing up my work, she told him proudly. Everyone in the village has been depending on me since I got back. I've been getting so many snacks each day too. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear you're keeping up with your practice. I was admiring a bit of your work while we walked by too. It all looks good. She beamed as he ruffled her hair, enjoying the chance to see how the girl had progressed in the time since they'd parted, and only had it interrupted by a cough coming from the rest of the group. And I'm here too, Satchel said, holding out her arms and waiting for a hug. Your beloved cousin who you definitely love just as much as a person you only met a couple years ago. Now act like you've missed me already. It's nice seeing you too, Sakhel. Mom will want to see you while you're here, so make sure you say hi to her before you leave. Hugging her back, it was only a second before she'd slipped away to grab Ben's arm to pull him along. Come on. You've got to see all of my work since you're here. Yeah, sure, I have time. Ben, Raelia spoke up. Weren't you telling us before how you wanted to get this done as quick as possible? I mean, yes, but if my talks with Hentath don't go well, there's a very real possibility she kicks us out of town, so if I don't look now, I might not get the chance. It's fine. It will be an hour, tops. He ignored both the look Thera gave him and the small smirk on her lips. Dallaire had been working hard. All he was doing was making sure to encourage such an enthusiastic student with just a bit of the time they had. If that meant setting themselves back by an hour, then no matter how bad things may have been, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And then most recently I carved this. Dallaire showed him as they finished up looking at all of the things she'd made in the last little while by ending on a small statue of her mother. Wonderfully carved as Ben looked it over. It's excellent, you got all of the key details and proportions right. And if my eyes don't deceive me, I do believe you did some of the shaping by using the destructive aspects of enchanting. Unauthorized duplication. This tale has been taken without consent. Report sightings. Yep. Good kid. Keep this up and you're going to go far. I'll make you a few new things before I leave too. You're the best. Ha, of course I am. Please don't spoil her too much. Fontesh called from the side where the rest of them talked, with Thera laughing before he could respond. He can't resist. Look at him, he's having as much fun as she is. I am having fun and I'm not spoiling. Don't worry. All this is me supporting an enthusiastic student. Trust me. Compared to having one that intentionally makes your life hell and leaves you to bleed out even when they have a healing magic, this is a whole heck of a lot better. That felt oddly specific, Sko muttered while Raelia shushed him, not wanting to open whatever can of worms was buried there, with all of them being interrupted by one more guest arriving in the form of exactly who he'd been looking for, Hentath coming into the yard after seeing them. MMH. So what are you here for this time? Do I really only visit when I want things? And wouldn't you like to take a few minutes to say hello to your dear granddaughter first? She's still sore that Dallaire loves me more. She does not. She likes my cooking a hell of a lot more. That's not fair. I'm obviously not going to compare. It's lovely to see you, Sakhel dear, Hentath sighed. It's genuinely good to see you doing well, and I'd love to chat a little when we're done. Now are you actually just here to visit, because if not, why are you here? Okay, fine, Ben sighed. There is something I'm here to discuss and you're not going to like it, but I promise I have a really, really good reason for why I'm going to ask this, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd at least hear me out. Well, all right. I suppose you've done enough for the village that I can do you that much of a favor at least. Now let's hear it. Okay. So I was hoping to use one of the trees from your grove dash. Absolutely not. What happened to hearing me out? We've been sending you some of our dead wood. Is that not good enough? For what I'm currently making, yes, but I'm trying to go beyond that. The world isn't in a good place right now. We all know that, but I want to do everything in my power to change that, with one of my aims to make that happen being to try and improve my strengthening potions. And why exactly would using one of our living trees be so much better than one of our dead ones? Because on something alive, I'd be able to use this. He pulled a soul crystal out from his ring, the very crystal he'd gone back to Stonewall that morning to grab, holding not just some normal construct he'd created to access a little extra power, but the imprisoned soul of a forbidden god, cutting to the very heart of what Ben was going to try. While his current strengthening potions already made use of one possessed plant, it had more in it that would act as ingredients, including the very wood he was currently trying to get, but he wanted to go beyond that. Throughout a process of testing and experimentation, he wanted to go through all of the ingredients he already used and those that he believed might have potential and enhance them all by touching them with the divine he had access to, harvesting what he could to see what would improve the overall formula. There were some animal parts he would have wanted to enhance if he could too, but that added a layer of unpredictability he wasn't sure he was willing to try to handle. Plants were hardy, They could take the damage that would come with having large parts of them broken away, but animals were different. He didn't know for sure what would happen to his trapped soul were to be in an animal when it died, nor how strong it would become before that happened from housing a god. It was too much of a headache overall for that, meaning he had to take what he could after having already made that one compromise. Explaining that all to Hentath, with her and most everyone else only looking more and more horrified, didn't seem to have the result he was looking for, with Raylia being the first to speak up. "Why exactly do you have a god's soul?" "Because I've got so much gumption and spunk. Also, it's a long story, the other gods know and are fine with it, I wouldn't worry. This really feels like the sort of thing that should be worried about, and would cause a huge reaction if it got out. What matters is that even if it does, nobody will believe you. Now Hentath, what do you say?" "Absolutely not," the elder said, only looking more firm. "Our groves aren't some common plants. They may not be people, but they have an intelligence to them that makes them worthy of dignity and respect. I understand where you're coming from, I do. But if I can help it, then you won't get so much as a seed from me." A firm answer from the woman, putting up a strong front and making it clear she wouldn't bend even if it meant fighting him. It left Ben with only one choice. "Hugh, okay. I understand." He nodded. "If you're so against it, then I'll stop trying." "Really?" she asked him, watching him with suspicious eyes. "I'm disappointed, but I like you guys. I like everyone I've met here. Given my only option is to either sneak in and steal from you or fight you all and just take it, I'm not going to do either. It's fine. I'll just keep using the wood I've already got and hope for the best with the experiments I'm already running. It will be fine." Even as he said it, he couldn't help but pinch his brow. The dryad wood was already an important ingredient for the potions. He was sure that if anything was going to make a difference, then that would have. But other than trying to contact other dryad groups or negotiating with Jagal herself, there was nothing he could do. With how hard it was to get that one village to like him, he was sure he wasn't going to have any luck if he tried the first, and it seemed for the latter. The goddess still viewed him favorably enough that he didn't want to risk sabotaging that relationship by attempting to go to her around the dryad's back. It was annoying, but he was stuck. Seeing him back down so easily left Hentath feeling a bit bad, but there was no helping it. On that ground, she wouldn't back down, no matter what it was for. The dryads cared for their trees. They weren't products of commerce, no matter what the reason. Even if it seemed like there were only the best intentions behind it. Even if it wasn't a slippery slope, it was an avenue that could lead to greedy eyes seeking out their woods for their own profits. Something she wasn't willing to tolerate. At an impasse, Ben was prepared to leave, only being stopped by Fontesh as she raised a hand. "Ben, if all you need is wood from a species of our homeworld instead of any specific tree, then I think I can make a suggestion." "Fontesh," Hentath said in a warning voice, being waved off by her grandchild. "It will be fine, grandmother. Not even you will have any issue with this. Come on." Eager to see any potential solution, Ben and the others followed her to the other side of the house, leaving him to instantly see exactly where she was going with that as he looked at a small bush that stood out more than anything else growing around it due to the absence of one particular thing. "That plant doesn't have a soul," he muttered in curiosity, drawing the other dryad's eyes as he said it. "I don't even know how to respond to hearing that," Fontesh said as she gave him a look. "I guess that explains why it doesn't respond beyond just growing under my magic. Anyway, you shouldn't have any issue with this, should you, grandmother?" "Not even sure how I could. If it's just this, then it's fine." "Seriously? Sweet. Thank you so much. So what kind of weird plant is it? Do you have any around in the woods I can take advantage of, or any seeds I can take?" The question got a laugh from the elder, shaking her head while she looked at him. "Handle that yourself. That's what grew from the seed you helped us materialize." "Oh, no freaking way," Ben said as he ran over, examining the small shrub for all it was worth. "Since the seed was materialized, as is this has to technically be a homunculus." "Oh man, I didn't even think of this. Fontesh, you are brilliant, you know that? This is going to work so well. It might even work exceptionally well. If there isn't already a soul in it, I wonder how it's going to react with a god shoved into it." I mean, there's technically also a demon soul in the crystal too, but that's still only 2 souls compared to the 3 there would have been if this was a normal plant. Man, I'm instantly wanting to see how this is going to turn out. The idea meant that traveling there at all had been pointless since he could have just materialized the seeds himself back home, but he didn't care. He hadn't had the idea. Getting it was a boon that showed the continued value of having others no matter how his mind would grow. No matter how much he could think, there would always be someone to point out something he missed or think something he didn't. He felt himself grinning as he imagined the potential, eager to see what would come from his experiments, but held off on running away long enough to say his goodbyes, as well as ask a question he couldn't leave without voicing. So, are you guys actually going to be okay out here? Things are getting dangerous. It's none of my business, but shouldn't you guys move to a bigger town or city where you have strength in numbers? Well, be fine, Hentath told him. We look after ourselves, and well, thanks to a certain someone, a few of us have more than enough strength to look out for ourselves. Okay, suit yourself. If you ever have an emergency you can't handle, then I guess do your best to get Jagel's attention, and if she passes it on to me, well, I'll do whatever I can. Oh, and I guess I should hand these off to you too, compliments of the Church of Myriad. Pulling out enough of his mana bracelets for every dryad in the village and making a box to hold them, he handed them over to Hentath, who looked at them curiously as Ben gave a brief explanation, telling her both their function along with the fact that they should only be used in emergencies if they could help it to keep the effects from hurting their growth rates. By the end, the explanation left her too stunned to properly respond, but the gift at least earned him a small smile from the older woman as she walked off, leaving them only with Dallaire and Fontesh, the first none too happy to see him leave so soon. But you just got here. Sorry kiddo, but things are crazy busy and only going to get worse. I'll try to visit again when I can. So be safe until then and keep working hard. Okay? All right. Good. He ruffled her hair one last time before they left. With everything he had to do, it was sure to be a long night, meaning they couldn't spare too much more time as they traveled back to Stonewall to see if any of his ideas would bear fruit. Getting back home, Ben didn't let Sakhel get any peace despite her return after being away for so long. After all, he had all of the seeds he'd need, but that still left growing them. The rest of her party went off after realizing how late Ben intended to keep her, and Thera went home to sleep in her bed for the first time in weeks, leaving the two alone to work through the night as Ben dragged her to the town's training grounds to grow all he needed to without destroying Sonia's yard. So, how much of everything do you need me to help grow? As much as possible for you. I need you to grow everything to a size that I'd be able to fit a ring around them snugly. She pulled a face as he said that. Some of these are grasses, Ben. Then you've got your work cut out for you. Even if it's just the roots, it's fine. I just need something, and I know your magic can push plants beyond their normal limits. Just think of it as practice. MMH. Okay. I'll go as quick as I can, but this is still a lot. It's going to take hours, and I'm going to need breaks for my mana in between. No, you won't, he told her, pushing a couple points into her soul to enforce the point. Right? Forgot about that. Okay. Let's get started then. She took his first seed and planted it in the ground, running her mana through it and making it sprout and grow, ending with its typical form of a yellow, lily-like flower in only a few seconds while looking at him expectantly. Looks good, but I'm going to be honest. It's not just the grasses I want you pushing yourself with. Yeah, I was able to pick that up. Give me just a few more moments then. Unauthorized use. This story is on Amazon without permission from the author. Report any sightings. Promoting its growth even more, what had been a single, solitary flower developed further into something more akin to a bush. Exactly what Ben had been hoping for by the time she stopped as he took off one of his bracelets and reshaped it, both to fit around the thick stem as well as hold the crystal in his pocket, with the change he'd come to expect taking place. It immediately had an effect, both adding a subtle, scaled look to it all while at the same time making the entire plant swell slightly more. An expected result given how he'd already seen it change from previous experience, but still satisfying to see it work as he harvested it, pulling a knife to cut just above the ring before slipping out the crystal, with the changes the skill had forced on the plant holding true after being cut off, letting him slip it into one of his rings before nodding to Sakhel, letting her move onto the next one from there to repeat the process again and again as the hours passed by, late into the night as they moved from one plant to the next. It wasn't until a few hours from sunrise that they were almost finished, leaving only one final one to do, with Ben bringing the seed for it into being himself, spending his mana to get the chance to see how it would turn out. He couldn't deny his curiosity on the matter. Seeing how shoving a soul into a thing without one would affect it couldn't help but fill him with wonder and excitement, but in the end, it was far less interesting than he'd hoped. The effect seemed more powerful than it otherwise would have been, but there was no additional change, the deity having no extra control over it despite the lack of competition within, still confined by the limitations of the body that held it. It did leave him to wonder what it was thinking trapped within the crystal after all of that. Ben wasn't going to risk connecting to a god no matter what circumstances it found itself in, but on that day it had gone from being forced to inhabit a fruit tree for nearly 2 years to going from plant to plant across only a few hours. Was it able to understand what was going on? Was it disorienting? Could it feel each bite of the knife as Ben harvested its temporary flesh? The answer didn't matter to him beyond mere curiosity. He hadn't started to sympathize with the god after all it had done, but the fact those were questions he wouldn't be getting answers to couldn't help but annoy him just a little. Questions he couldn't answer were always going to do that to him. Doesn't matter. Myriad, myriad, myriad. Pay attention to me. I need a favor. Yeah, I'm cute like that. Anyway, could you ask Analia if she could get me a few hundred volunteers for this evening from the succubi? Or maybe 1,000. I want to test the effects of my various potion attempts. I may not have worried about it last time, but when I'm actively attempting to see any variance across my recipes, I need consistency from the species too. The last thing I want to find out is that one of my options just happens to be slightly more or less powerful for some species than others and have my results screwed up. Honestly, it would be better if we could keep them all the same gender and roughly the same age, weight, and body type too, but I'll settle for what I can get since it absolutely needs to be people who'd be willing to share their attributes with me too so I can compare results. It will be good enough. Oh, my bad. Thanks for your help, Sakhel. You're good to go. Want me walking you back home? MMH. It's fine. I can handle myself. Just let me know how this turns out. Don't worry. If it all works out, then you're getting a supply too, so wait and enjoy. Oh, and take this. He tossed her one of the bracelets he'd already given out to her village and walked off before she could say anything. She'd already heard what they did, and she was a mage. Getting it would only help her in an emergency. So parting from there, Ben rushed to the shop without worrying about getting any rest first. He had energy for days and was going to put it to full use if he wanted to have his results the following morning, and began by slipping on his jacket before going through to the further gate that held both his larger workshop and all of his clones in Analia and materializing a range of containers for how to sort all of his new ingredients into. There were a few different ways they'd need to be prepared. Some would be steeped in water until they released their compounds, and others that would be boiled until the plant itself broke down into a fine paste. Along with those, he'd need to dry and grind into a powder, and still others with even more complex preparations to get to the state he needed them in for his experiments. With the room turning into a flurry of movement and magic, with his bodies rushing all over the place and his power being spent, extracting and breaking down what he could, while at the same acting as extra arms by moving things around under his power and materializing even more on top of it, creating bottles to hold each of the concoctions by the time he finished each one, with hundreds of different recipes to his name by the end. Every one of them having potential to go beyond the previous limits in his quest for greater power. Yeah, I'll take that. And myriad, what's the word? Peeking through one of the doors at the front of his warehouse, he could already see a crowd forming after that day of alchemy, all coming after their goddess had requested as much of them, and giving Ben the exact sort of turnout he'd been hoping for. Tell Analia I say thanks. Good point, will do. But first, materializing 10 small books, with each section having a space for names, attributes, and the specific potion each one would drink. He was all prepared for the long day of testing to get started. Even if he could remember all of the results himself, it was still good to have a record of it, and things would speed up considerably by using a few of his homunculi to distribute them once he got started. So all with that ready, he went back to Stonewall to grab Thera as a safety measure, all to see if any of his efforts would pay off. Even utilizing his clones, the work had taken far longer than he'd hoped. just from how many people there were to talk to and distribute potions among, along with the fact that he kept them around for another half-hour after for Thera to observe, only making things longer and keeping them from thinning out the crowd as quickly as they otherwise could have. It was the sort of thing that would have gone significantly smoother if he'd planned ahead better instead of letting it be such a last-minute thing, but those was the perils of trying to get it done as fast as possible. What mattered was that despite the hours of work it was finally finished, leaving the two alone by the end. "So you need to do that all over again tomorrow?" Thera asked while she stretched. "What results are you even expecting to see?" "I'll take anything I can get, and it won't be as bad at least. All I'll be doing is collecting results. It should be easy. And then I make all of the potions that I and everyone I care about could need by the next wave and hand my results off to the gods, continuing to not be rewarded for my excellent work because so many of them are jerks. Seriously, at what point am I going to feel a bit of appreciation? I try so hard for this stupid, doomed planet. Considering you live here, maybe improving everyone's chances is its own reward? Not even a little. Just wait, one day some god will look at all I've done and admit to themselves they really should give me a blessing out of basic principle. Well, you're free to hope, but with today finished at least, what now? Since you eased up my work, want to head home, or are you going to stay here and keep up with that? That in question being his materialization, with Ben constantly creating new mana bracelets through the power he was taking into himself and storing them in his ring each time while he made more, the same thing he'd been doing the entire day on top of anything else. He needed to be prepared for whenever the gods got back to him about whether they'd give in to what really was a relatively small request in comparison to everything he'd accomplished, and assuming they gave him the okay, then he'd begin distribution. Of course, if they denied him, then he had no clue what he'd do. On the one hand, he couldn't just not help spread his latest creation throughout the world, but on the other, he couldn't simply not call their bluff either. If he let them get away with not compensating him even once, then he'd have to deal with them trying to avoid paying him forever after, even when he already felt like he was giving them an excellent bargain. If they try not to pay me, then on to the typical strategy one guess. I can try and get Pelania and Greed to spread the word about what cheap asses they are for me. In fact, I could get some of the other summons help too. Imagine hearing from a soul mage that the gods aren't willing to reward mortals for their work. That would be a blow. It wasn't an immediate issue, but given that he'd already let Myriad talk him down so far, he really couldn't let what he wanted be reduced further, but that wasn't currently a problem. It would turn out, however, it was going to, but with his main task of the day done, there was still plenty for him to do. Considering the strength of both his current job as well as Soul Mage, he really needed to try to take advantage of each to awaken what skills he could. Even if he essentially wasn't getting bonuses anymore to either his attributes or his lifespan when it came to second-tier awakenings, they were still always worth it, especially with 3 inclination skills now to his name. With all of them at the 9th level, he knew it had to be possible, and 2 of them were even helpful to the skills he specifically wanted to get to the 3rd tier as well, with the only issue being that those were the ones he didn't have a firm idea on how he might manage it. He didn't know what could possibly push Soul Inclination over the edge, and while he could think of a couple ideas that might work for Evil Inclination, it wasn't anything he could test out immediately, with both facts making his teeth clench. And there's a level I don't need. God, with the bonuses on that, I might level up just from eating my food. What would I even do if that awakens? Okay, doesn't matter. I may have no idea for how I'd awaken the other inclinations, but even if it's not what I want, I might be able to do it with destruction, so why don't we try that since I have Thera around? Wanna try helping me awaken a skill? Yeah. Sure, why not? It seemed she wasn't even going to bother commenting on it by that point, simply accepting that if he thought he could, then he likely had a reason, and walked back to the shop after locking up Ben's work area for the day, watching as he stripped off his jacket to leave behind. So why aren't you taking that with you recently? She asked him. I'm so used to seeing you wear it any time you're awake. What's with the change of pace? Well, it's too useful to me, he admitted. It makes things too easy ever since I modified it. I don't want to get used to using it as a crutch. Ha! I thought you loved easy, she teased. Did you actually manage to fix everything that went wrong in your head? Hey, I'd just look like a real fool if I became useless without it. A tool that good. It needs to be enjoyed on special occasions, that's all. He still hadn't brought up his concerns about the future with her. his vision of what was to come for the world and the part he felt more and more sure he'd have no choice to play in it. He didn't know how he was supposed to explain his fears that if he wasn't willing to risk his life for the world then there'd be no way they could win, with other issues attached to it. Reading on Amazon or a pirate site. This novel is from Royal Road. Support the author by reading it there. Just the thought of saying it felt conceited. Why should he among anyone have the power to handle it? Sure, he had one useful skill for dealing with deities, but that was it. That didn't mean it should become his problem when there were still plenty of stronger people on the planet, along with all of the world's gods. Surely someone else would figure things out, and all of the growth he'd gained along the way would instead become nothing more than a nice little bonus for him to enjoy on the world thereafter, with his current struggle to gain it becoming nothing more than a funny memory of when he'd become so self-absorbed that he'd thought he was the only chance the world had. Yeah, and maybe the demons will close the invasion points tomorrow, or maybe some other race will manage to kill them all off in the next few days. Wouldn't that all just be swell? He thought sarcastically. At least for now, I'm still making this my problem. Which means I really do need to bring this up with Thera, but not then. He couldn't just not mention his concerns to her. He was pretty sure she was already picking up on at least a bit of it, but actually bringing it up would make it all feel too real. He just wanted to hold off while he could for a little longer, even if he wasn't able to fool himself into thinking he was pursuing strength for strength's sake. Anyway, he said, breaking his thoughts before he could spiral, let's go to the woods so we can reduce my odds of blowing up the town. You really do say the most worrying things, you know that? Yeah, it's come up once or twice, but anyway. Shall we? He offered his arm, which she took, and they both headed for the door, only stopping when they saw a note on it addressed to the two of them from Falk, with Ben pulling it and giving it a quick read before handing it over. Wonder what that's about? Thera muttered when she was done, with Ben shrugging. Not sure, but he wouldn't ask for no reason. I guess we'll just need to be free. The note told them he was looking to bring the two along for some business in a week's time, but that was mostly it, only telling them beyond that it might take a couple of days, so they should prepare to be away for that long. It pricked at his curiosity and had the potential to get in the way of his various work, but this was coming as a request from his teacher. He'd make the time. With that last little surprise out of the way, the two finally left to use what hours they had left of the day to see if Ben really would be able to push another one of his skills beyond its limits. Deep in the woods, as far away as they thought they needed to be to ensure no stray group of adventurers might get too close, Ben did his best to think of exactly what he'd need to do to push for the awakening he'd hoped for, relying on Thera's magic to try and keep it relatively safe. Okay, so however what I'm about to try turns out, you are probably going to want to apply some healing spells to us afterwards. I'm not exactly sure if radiation poisoning is a thing people in this reality have to deal with, but I don't want to be the one who discovers it. No clue what you're talking about, but you already have me worried. It will maybe be fine. Now don't mind me materializing all I can to make this even a little safer. With the first thing he brought into being with his power being a diamond, not that anyone would be able to tell by looking at it. The size was so small it was more akin to a speck of dust that he was focusing in on with his material sense more than his eyes. It was basically nothing but around that he materialized a small ball of lead. Not even as big as a baseball, but with walls an inch thick in the hopes that would do the job of helping ease the consequences of what he was trying to manage, all while running into the same problem of not knowing for sure if it would work like he was hoping for, since he was making a comparison to his original reality when doing it. Still, it was the best he could hope for, and he could still barely feel the small speck of crystal through it with his sense skill, letting him direct Thera on what he needed her to do after. Can you place a barrier tightly around this? Something light wouldn't be able to pass through but won't stop mana? Translucent barriers were always going to be susceptible to light attacks, making him want to account for that too, and seeing as how neither of them would be inside of it, they didn't need to worry about seeing. Even after putting it up, it wasn't interfering with Ben's ability to sense what was within, letting him make his attempt for whatever it was worth as he reached out with his magic and tried to use it to destroy the stuff it held. Not just breaking the diamond down to some finer dust, not collapsing it into its base molecules of carbon or even into individual atoms. Ben was trying to take what he knew of reality through the gray to break each atom that constituted that fleck into the subatomic particles that made it up, and then further beyond, destroying it in a far realer sense than anything he'd done before, with the risk of equally disastrous results if he succeeded. He knew that, in theory, doing that was going to release energy, with the only thing he was worried about being how much, but he'd taken the precautions he could to make the attempt and spent his power on what he knew was there, feeling the fleck disappear while the notification he was hoping for went off in his head. Wasn't expecting the level on top of it, but I'll take it, he muttered before focusing back on Thera. And how was that for you? Did you notice anything? No, should I? Honestly, not sure. Even after only using such a small speck in his test, he'd still thought it would be enough to balloon the lead around it, but with Thera holding it tight with her power, it might have kept the energy compressed in a way it normally wouldn't have been. The obvious way to check would be to hold his hand by it to see if he could feel any warmth coming from the metal, but even if he wasn't too worried about getting a lethal dose of radiation, he still didn't view it as being worth the risk, leaving only disposal to still be taken care of. So before you use any precautionary healing spells, would you mind dropping this thing as close to the center of the planet as you can manage? I really want to know just what you think you might have done to want that sort of overkill. What can I say? I'm just a cautious boy. Anyway, thanks for your help, Thera. I got my awakening, just like I wanted. I couldn't even tell. She shook her head while disposing of the lead ball. You really don't get bonuses for this anymore, do you? If I'm really lucky, then that may have knocked my intelligence up by a point. He shrugged. It's fine, I now have destruction affinity giving bonuses to my material manipulation, which is much more valuable, and probably a couple other skills too. Even if they aren't the ones I'm focused on, it's not going to hurt. Not what you're focused on? She laughed. What, not aiming to become a contender for a fifth skill? At this point, it wouldn't be shocking if you become a mind god first with what you already have. I guess I wouldn't say no to that. It wasn't the aim, but he wouldn't turn it down if he stumbled into it. In the end, it was all more power for him to claim for himself. Who knows, maybe if things work out and I live in the end, trying to do that can be my next goal after everything is done. You really are trying to turn yourself into a monster. You know that? Myriad sighed. Nobody awakens skills after only a couple days of having them been nobody. Sure they do, I'm right here. Besides, if I'm really under a fourth-tier job, then a second-tier awakening has to basically just be like raising any other level to skills that apply to it. Honestly, with how easy getting it was, getting material manipulation to the third tier might not be an unreasonable dream either. You are never going to get anything done if you keep raising your list of goals. It's not a goal, just a thought, don't worry. I was already thinking about how I might try and lift my mind skills to that level in the next few years if I survive. It's the same thing there. Just how powerful do you want to become? Hey, as long as I don't die in the process. If we win, then I've got over a century of life ahead of me after all of my current awakenings. More if Thera keeps trying to extend my lifespan with her magic, and I'd extend it even further with even a single third-tier awakening. Do you really think I wouldn't take advantage of that time to try and grow more? Heck, with all of that time, I could aim to raise some other skills too. I certainly wouldn't say no to seeing what a third-tier inclination would look like, or maybe my intelligence enhancement given how much growth I'm already seeing in that attribute after awakening it only a couple days ago. Just keep that musing up here away from other prying ears, Myriad told him. Honestly, the sort of nightmare it looks like you have the potential to grow into. I can only wonder how things would have turned out if the demon's invasion had held off for another decade. God, I wish. With that much extra time to grow, he felt confident he could have been a contender in a few more skills by then, even if he wouldn't have necessarily had the same drive to awaken them. It wasn't like he wouldn't have wanted to or had it as a goal, but the threat of obliteration was a powerful motivator, one he could feel even then. Well, ignoring your quest for horrifying levels of power, the other gods have accepted your offer to produce your new tools in exchange for getting to see the mythic items of the world. It's not something we'll be able to do immediately, seeing as how they're currently getting some heavy use, as I'm sure you can imagine, but I'll let you know when they'll make them available. And in that case, after I'm done tomorrow, I'll drop off what I already have at Analia's church so her people can handle distribution and then focus on making more when I have time. Not exactly like it takes you long since you're materializing then all in one go. I've told you you're horrifying before, right? A hurtful number of times, yes. Doesn't matter, I'm useful. Anyway, I should probably head down and start the day. Fine, fine. Let me know how your potion affects your attributes after you drink it, I guess. What? What aren't you telling me? Nothing. You're getting your results for how all of your tests turned out when you leave, and tomorrow is the day you'd be drinking your strengthening potion anyway. What was with the pause? What the hell are you about to do? The lack of trust hurts so much. You know that, right? Ben. Tell me so I don't feel compelled to watch you all day. In that case, just feel compelled to watch me while I'm in Stonewall and you'll see. You are the worst and are on the edge of giving me a panic attack. It's only been a few days since you got back, and you've already done so much. What the hell are you going to do? Not giving another word, Ben left the realm for the night, not wanting to have the talk he knew would ensue if he explained himself, as he instead ran away, leaving with the feeling that it would be easier to ask for forgiveness while his god fell into despair. Hot damn. This is better than I was hoping for. Like, a lot better. Going over all of the results from his various potions, only 3 recipes were weakened for his experimentation, along with a few people who got only 3-point bonuses, but across all of the data, there was far more to see. Interestingly, there were a few potions that seemed to raise a few attributes more than others, and there were a handful that doubled the expected result, giving a dozen people lucky enough to get them attribute bonuses of 6 to everything. Any one of those would have been good enough to invest in, if not for his holy grail. The single recipe he'd found among them all that raised all attributes by 7 for the few volunteers who drank it, threatening to make him break out into a wide grin for all to see while he was busy dropping off the new bracelets to Analia's church. Assuming the effects of Defiler of Ambrosia kept up the same way they had after eating Jagel's fruit, that meant he'd be getting 14 points for each one, a monthly bonus that others would kill for. There really is nothing better than being so compatible with magical steroids. He thought happily as he passed through his gate back to Stonewall, with Myriad picking that exact moment to pop into his head. If you discover this tale on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen. Please report the violation. You're exaggerating. I have no clue what I could have ever done to cause that sort of feeling in you. He got less of an answer to that than he did a pain scream, but for the most part he ignored it to instead set up the shop for potion making, using the recipe that had pulled the best results as he pulled out ingredients he had prepared from the day before, carefully measuring everything out to make a large cauldron of the stuff by the end before divvying it out across a few hundred bottles and repeating the process to make more. He was creating it for himself, his friends, and the entire Dryad village. It was important to make sure he got everything he needed to finished for the months to come ahead of time, but Myriad didn't see it that way. I'm really not. Fine, fine. Just let me finish up here and I'll get started. With hundreds of potions made, Ben gave them a look before storing them away, thinking out loud. You know, I can't just call these strengthening potions anymore, can I? It's a different recipe and the effects are more than doubled. What do you think of calling them divine potions? Ah, just one more second. Taking the last potion he had out, Ben raised it to his lips, holding the bottle there for a second without pouring it back before putting it away with a grin. Okay, that one actually was to mess with you. Gotta live up to my titles. Anyway, I'm actually starting now, so stop fussing. You'll get to see in a minute. You probably don't, but after all of that, you don't get a choice. Just think of how awful the pain of not knowing would be. Well, hold it in for a bit. This won't take long. Pulling out some smaller tools that were still for alchemy, Ben carried out much the same process he had before, using the same ingredients to by and large make a single serving of the same potion he had before by all appearances, with Myriad suffering all the more for it. It's going to be similar but different. Don't you worry. This really was my goal for the day. With those words he spent some of his power, pulling out 2 additional ingredients to replace some of what would have gone in instead. An acid to bring a certain something into a solution, the sort that would be weak enough to be safe for consumption and become all the more so after it was added to the other ingredients, and other than that a tiny few pieces of bone, looking to be from a small knuckle of an animal which Ben had been hanging onto for about 2 years of his life, waiting for the perfect moment to use it but always suffering under both his indecision on the matter and his belief he would become better able to take advantage of it in the future as his skills grew, with Myriad gasping once he understood what was about to happen. Damn. A shame nobody ever clarified that, and now it's too late. He ran his mana through the pieces, breaking them into dust to fall into the acid and swirling it until it had completely dissolved while waiting from there for the right time to add it to the rest of the small potion before pouring it in and continuing on. With the one piece of a forbidden god he'd been allowed to keep for himself finally getting its use. He couldn't deny he was worried about it. God bones were used for weapons, not potions, and he'd already boiled the hell out of it anyway to make some potions for Sonia too. He didn't know how effective it would be, nor if that was a smarter choice than making it into a tool or weapon for himself. If he really was going to have to somehow go against Own, what would be more important, the internal strength that came with growing his status or the external benefits to be had from the things he could make? In the end, he'd picked the first, and without waiting for it to cool, he picked it up the second he was done and drained it down his throat, feeling its warmth the entire way down. Now all that's left to see is how much my attributes grow with that. It wouldn't happen instantly, being the sort of thing he'd need to check in the morning, but even as he stood there he felt power coursing through him, a sure sign that there was at least some effect like he'd hoped. His god sighed, not bothering to hide his complicated emotions on the matter. Bah! There's no point worrying about that when I still don't know how I'm going to finish my current one, so better to do it now before anyone thinks to try and get me to use it for someone else. Ben sighed. And why does it always come down to me to help other people get through their jobs, huh? Why can't someone else become an adventurer and help poor, stuck? Ben. Wait. Ben didn't hear him. He was clutching at his head, but his eyes were lighting up while his thoughts exploded. A realization and ideas coming to him in droves as he thought aloud. Holy shit. Holy shit. I've been way too laser-focused. I've only been thinking about what I can do for others, but this entire time I've had the solution right in my lap. And not just one solution. If this works, then I'm going to be able to do, well, everything. Who cares what my other jobs are? How strong or weak doesn't even matter at that point. Myriad, everything I've done until this point, every job I've gained and all of the experience I've earned from it, it means nothing compared to what I've just thought of. You thought I'd been breaking the job system before? If I'm right, I've just destroyed it. It will never be the same again. Oh my God, I think I'll actually be able to finish the stupid job in a month, and then from there, I'll be able to finish all of them in a matter of days, maybe even hours depending on how lucky I get. I'm totally about to clear my list. Holy crap, the world is not ready for me right now. I'm about to boost my growth rates even beyond what they currently are and get whatever skills and levels the system is willing to toss me. This is going to be so good. First of all, by finding an adventurer. He was instantly running, not caring about how he looked while he beelined to the guild, with Myriad talking to him the entire time. Myriad, the adventurer job, has a few key features. Obviously, the main aspect is merging experience pools, but there's more beyond that too. Now, the aspect I've been taking advantage of until this point is the fact that by having experience pools merged, I can take advantage of the jobs I'm already unnaturally suited for to help everyone I'm joined with, but there's another part I've been ignoring until now. It's a job that lets the user gain experience through combat, magic, and killing monsters, but more important than that is all party members can gain experience the way the others can too after linking up. Give me an adventurer, a mind user, and an apprentice mage and I'll be able to finish anything. Completing this one job is still going to take a while, but after I'll be able to finish everything I have so long as I can meet those qualifications. Oh my God. It's actually hard to express how smart I feel right now. There was a touch of horror in the god's voice as Myriad processed what he'd just heard. In hindsight it was obvious, but it was so easy to miss simply because that wasn't a way anyone used it. The way Ben would take advantage of the adventurer job already was beyond what anyone would expect. The thought of exploiting it further hadn't occurred to either of them, but now that he'd realized, it felt so clearly a way for him to do exactly what he'd said. Finding an adventurer was a path to Ben running out of jobs, as simple as that. Even if any of his others happened to be third-tier jobs, it would still be at most a month to get through them using that method, possibly far shorter given how his skills had grown. He didn't know how others would react to that, he didn't care. As soon as he reached the guild, he threw open the door, getting eyes on him from everyone which he ignored, instead seeing Ankh on staff and making a beeline for them. Is Cecily in? She is, though she's probably about to leave. Cool. Thanks, Ankh. He was already moving past them as he said it, making a beeline to her office and opening the door. You know, knocking is preferred. the guild master called out while looking through her last bit of paperwork as her eyes moved to him, with Ben speaking up before she could go on. Cecily, I need whatever bit of authority I have as a first-ranked adventurer to get someone with the adventurer job and 3 free spots in their party, as soon as humanly possible, pretty please and thank you. Okay. How fast do you need it? I could probably manage something in the next week or 2. But too long, is there no faster way? I will put down literally any amount of money to get this done. I'm not sure how much that would help. We only have so many people with access to that job that even if you put a fortune down, right now everyone understands the value of attribute bonuses enough that you're going to have trouble finding anyone who would give up what they've already earned partway through. Those bonuses could be the difference between life and death. If you give me time, though, I could search out and find someone for you, even send a request through the main guild to see who we could get. Thanks, but I don't have the time. That does give me an idea, though. Oh, but if you could spread the word around the guild that I'll pay anyone who takes it and leave spots open for me and 3 others to join, then I'd appreciate it. With extra going out for anyone who keeps their full party empty for me. He was running away before she could respond, with his next destination already decided as he rushed out, running back to the shop and through his mini-gate to get to his next destination of Analia. Support the creativity of authors by visiting Royal Road for this novel and more. It was late in that nation, the difference in time meaning it was already dark, but he didn't care. By that point, the staff and residents all knew him well, which helped him with his main goal as he ambushed the closest one. Where can I find Pelania? The Queen? I believe she's enjoying a late dinner right now. Great, thanks. Down to the dining room he went, again pushing through doors to find Thera's very tired mother eating with her husband at her side. With the 2 summoned, her nation had taken in there too. There was no sign of Lux or her family, but he was sure it was too late for Saren. Not that it mattered. Before anyone there could react to his unexpected arrival, he was already shamelessly making his request. Hey, great to see you all. I've come to beg for a favor. Nice to see you too, Ben, the Queen said as a bit more energy returned to her eyes. You seem unusually manic. That's because I am. Sorry. It's complicated, but I've figured out something pretty intense, and long story short, I need someone with the adventurer job, and at least 3 empty spaces in their party as soon as possible. Also a mind user, pretty please. I will pay any amount of money to get this done as soon as it can be. None of them seemed to know how to immediately react, but Pelania waved over a servant standing at the side. Hot Anna, be a dear and get a message down with that request to our local guild branch. Would you? And Ben, while we're doing that, why don't you join us and take a breath to explain exactly why this is so urgent? Yes, sure I can, sorry. No, wait, thanks, you're the best. God. I may need an apprentice or true mage too, but I'm going to try and earn some brownie points and . Ben. From the beginning, if you would? Ah, right, sorry. With the Queen's relaxed attitude helping to calm him down, Ben took a seat with the rest of them, giving an explanation about what he'd been through and the realization he'd made, with all of them looking surprised by the end. Well, the Queen started once he'd begun. You certainly are an ambitious boy. Who even thinks to do something like that? God. I wish I'd realized this years ago. Holy crap. Sorry, I'm so excited. I'm pretty sure this is the smartest I've ever felt. And how long did you say this was going to take you to finish? Carly asked him, her eyes gleaming. For my current one, I honestly can't be sure, but I'm really hopeful it won't take forever. The ideal would be a couple of months tops, but I won't be able to know for sure until I start going through it. Okay. I'm officially signing up at the guild tomorrow, so check with me sometime in the future. I sure as hell want to take advantage of you. You got it, I'll take any adventurers I can get, and I have enough jobs for it. Currently sitting at 33 potential ones, and I'm sure I'll get more as I go through them. Sorry. Just thinking about it is going to get me all hyped up again. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but there is one small thing I should mention, the Queen told him. You're really going to struggle finding a mind user. I'm sorry? Why? It's such an easy job to get, and for people who focus on mind skills. That's the issue. Ben, not many people focus on mind skills. What? Why would they? Given how long jobs take, Why take a job like that when there's others that will likely apply for the main mind skills anyone would want while helping with significantly broader abilities too? And that's not considering the fact that it usually takes a person more than a few in that class to get that particular one unlocked when the most any typical person can expect to end up with would be speed reading or calculate. That's, okay. Maybe we won't find anyone working in the local guild, but if we look across Analia, then I'm sure we'll find a handful. I'm sure we'd find a handful who have it as a potential option, she clarified. Finding a person currently going through the job, though? It would surprise me more if we have any when there really are so many better jobs out there. As someone at least partially specialized in mind skills, that really does hurt so much to hear, but okay, that's not insurmountable. All that means is I need to try somewhere else that's more likely to have some mind users, and I already have an idea. Would it be cool with you if I run back here in the morning to see if anyone's taking my offer? That's fine. Fantastic. You're the best, Pelania. You can make up for it by giving me grandchildren. He didn't hear her final words. He was already out the door and rushing to his next hope for finding a mind user to take advantage of, going on his way to the main gate network to get to the magic towers. He felt himself growing a bit faster with each step as his potion coursed through him, still improving his attributes while he went and continuing on until he stood outside of the library for his next target, taking a calming breath and letting himself in. Just as empty as his last visit, there were still workers on staff for the few mages around to take advantage of the place, letting him hope at least that the one he'd be looking for would be there as well, with him heading to Killy's office to try and find her, getting an answer as he knocked. Come in. The knowledge holder was sitting at her desk, the office covered in paper and work to be handled given the role she was playing in strategizing, with the woman looking exhausted for all she'd been doing, even as she glanced his way. Ben, what brings you here today? Sorry. I see you're busy, so I'll keep it brief. I know it's a lot to ask, but I was hoping I'd be able to put a sign up somewhere to help me find someone with the mind user job. Maybe even get the librarians to mention it to any patrons they end up helping if possible. And can I ask why? Long story short, I'm going to try and take advantage of them to help me get through my current job faster by forming a party with them through an adventurer, and that's one of the keys I need to do it. I see, and does it have to be a mind user? Would a mind master work? I'd take either so long as they have a job level below 94. That's really the only qualification for me. In that case, take Verbum. Huh? Is he not under some third-tier job? Or has he just not unlocked it yet? No, one of the more interesting discoveries that came with summoning people at that tier was that apparently one gets the job even if they don't pass through the lower branches first. But when he arrived, after talking, we decided he wouldn't go through that one to begin with. Given his skill has no level and some details he was able to find out about that particular job, we decided it would be best for him to go through something broader to help give him an easier time of gaining related skills too. Neat. In that case, I'll definitely take him. I'll swing by again tomorrow. Thanks, Killy. You're the best. With how smoothly that had gone, he couldn't help but feel positive as he left, even if he'd found someone with a harder job than he'd been expecting. But what does that matter? Compared to mine, whatever experience his needs is going to be nothing. Now to just track down the last one I need. Hope she won't be too hard to find. Vasta! Ben called out after his hours of searching for her, finding the non-affinitied mage patrolling outside of All Faith for any demons who might have stuck around after getting through their own invasion point. Ben, what are you doing out here? Looking for you. What's your current job? What? Why? Because if it's a general non-affinity job, then we can help each other a bit. I'm looking for someone to pull into my party dash. I'll do it. What? Okay. Thanks, but where's this enthusiasm coming from? I've heard from the three about what you recently pulled with them, and I'm too greedy to not try and snag some benefits for myself. The current one I'm under is Great Non-Affinity Mage, and I seem to get experience from all applications of the magic. Does that work? This story originates from a different website. Ensure the author gets the support they deserve by reading it there. It absolutely does, but I should mention this isn't going to be a speedrun like I did with the others. Hopefully, this will get you experience a bit faster than you otherwise would be, but I honestly won't know until we do it. Then that's still fine. You're a bright enough boy. I'm sure you'll work something out if we bind our pools together. Well, I'm hopeful at least so if you're sure I will happily take you. In that case, do you mind meeting up with me at the Magic Tower's library tomorrow? I can do that. Fantastic. I appreciate the help. With all of the key components of his party found, even with a hiccup along the way, he was in a perfect place to try and beat the job system once more, only needing morning to come to see if he'd be able to pull it off. You look obnoxiously cheerful, Myriad sighed. I'm already worried about the future. The future where I stand atop the world as a god king with unlimited power? No, the more immediate future where you let all of the bonuses you're going to get after finishing all of your jobs completely go to your head, which it looks like I'm getting to enjoy a taste for early on. Oh, come on, Myriad. I deserve to let this go to my head at least a little bit. Combining the idea that I might have every single job done with the amount my attributes are going to grow throughout the night, I might actually unlock the king jobs for every attribute to my name by the time the next wave rolls around. Not your agility unless you take up running. We're ignoring that one, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that I feel like my odds of surviving everything have just gone up by an entire percentage point. What did you think your chances were before this? Assuming I awaken the 2 skills I want? Between 0 and 1, so that extra 1 on top of it is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting. Hell, it's definitely going to boost my chances of breaking through the 3rd tier barrier, so look forward to that. Oh man. Everything is actually going kind of right for once. How can life feel so good? Pelania was right. You really are manic right now. Can you blame me? Considering that I'm basically guaranteed to die at the end of the year, every bit of good news I get is like finding an oasis in a desert and I'm here to drink it all up. Ah, so this is all your way of deflecting then, gotcha. Hey now, the joy is genuine. If I'd thought of this a couple years ago, then it would be all the more so. There's definitely other jobs I could have finished sooner in the past by snagging myself a mind user or two. It is absolutely brutal hearing how uncommon that option is. I want to write a letter of complaint. Well, given your soul production, it's not like you're going to need one for anything else, Myriad reasoned. Unless you have another 3rd tier one in there that will take you a bit longer, it seems like anything else you have will be able to be knocked down by just finding an apprentice mage or a true mage. Maybe even the experience adventurer gets from magic could be enough. MMH true, that's worth remembering. I still have my hope that at least one more of my weirder ones will end up being a 3rd tier option, but for now I'll take what I can get, and if comes down to it I'll track down a mind user somehow or other to help speed things along, but that's a future worry. Still gotta get through this one first. He was already strategizing on how to make that happen too. He would be able to make far more souls than he had before since he'd awakened soul production, but to keep his promise to himself, he'd only be pushing it beyond his natural limits while working in the shop, since that was when he'd have his jacket. Just thinking about it made him want to immediately break that promise too. If he kept the jacket with him and just constantly pulled in mana at all times, then he'd finish it even faster, but that would only tempt him further to keep it on him at all times. The point of leaving it behind was to keep him from using it as a crutch. He couldn't just keep making compromises for his convenience, it would defeat the entire point. Plus that would still kill my natural growth rates. I'll be able to make up for the times I use it if I level soul expansion a couple more times, but eventually that will stop too unless I can figure out how to awaken that skill without tearing my poor soul apart. No, as much as I want to, I'm sticking to the way I've already planned. I'll just need to make the most of the time I do use it. Besides, with all of the ways I've grown since using it to make my jacket and escape, I'm going to be making way more souls in comparison to what I was doing while trapped. I'll see tomorrow how much my mana has grown with the God Potion, which will let me materialize more at once, and even before then I was making over 30 times more than I was before thanks to my recent level to it. Man, Amy might be right, there's probably a few theological implications I've been ignoring to this. Oh well, as long as there isn't some god of the multiverse watching and judging me, it's probably fine. His mind briefly flashed to one of his more recent titles of transgressor, and even though he was sure it hadn't come from Own, he told himself that it was most certainly a system-granted one, nothing from an even higher being that wasn't fond of his actions. Ben was practically skipping off to Analia as the day started, his joy unable to be contained. 70%. His attributes had all grown by 70% by the time he'd woken up. It was a result far better than he'd been hoping for given all he'd already put his pieces of bone through to extract anything useful from them, and it left the results 20% better than the ones he'd fed Sonia in the past. It was an increase in strength beyond even his first time awakening a skill, and it felt like it. Of course, the potion had to technically be weaker than the one he'd given her all that time ago, given he was also getting the benefits of his ambrosia skill, but there was still a whole new level of power coursing through him that left him feeling on top of the world. It was a fact further reflected just by trying to get to Analia. Even without trying, he was moving faster, and if he wasn't careful, his few times skipping would send him high up in the air, far beyond the height an athlete from Earth would have been able to jump. Not that any of that should have been unexpected. He still knew that on average, a person's untrained attributes would typically hover between 100 and 150 depending on a few different factors, but using those numbers as a guide, he was obviously far beyond them for anything he had. His strength was now over 10 times greater than what any normal person could expect, and his intelligence over 100. Even his agility was beyond what any average person could hope for unless they dedicated years of focus on training it. He felt power that reached beyond any normal limit. Oh yeah, definitely letting this go to my head. He carried on like that until he left Polinia's home and slipped through to the front gate, finding 3 people standing with the guards in wait. "Hello there," he greeted brightly. "I'm Ben, the one who put in the request. Can I assume you're a party of 3? You can." A succubus nodded. "We were told this was going to be a decent way to earn money, but we weren't given any more information than that, so we were hoping to get more of an explanation before we agreed." "Yeah, fair, no worries. The long and short of it is that I currently have a job I'm not super compatible with that I want to get through, so I was looking for adventurers who would be able to help merge my job pool with a few folks with jobs I actually am great at getting experience in. I don't believe we'll be slowing you down by doing this, but it's admittedly a possibility, which is why I'm willing to pay well for the work. The key thing is that I only need 5 levels though, so even if it's not quick, I shouldn't need to use you guys until the next wave." "I see. Would you give us a minute to talk?" "Of course, take your time." He moved off to the side while the 3 discussed it amongst themselves before ultimately agreeing, with the key motivator being money. Even if he did end up needing them for a while, he was offering enough that they wouldn't have any concerns even if their work was impacted by him joining them. It made it worth the risk, and it was soon after that he was brought into the party, officially sharing his burden with others. "Fantastic. It's wonderful to have you all. Now the only thing left is to go grab the other 2. We'll make this quick, and then you can all go on with your day." Only taking the succubus who actually had the job with him, he led her through the gate to the other 2 waiting for him outside, one looking far more positive than the other. "Verbum, Vasta. Great to see you both," he called out. "Ready for a couple weeks of helping me finish my job?" "Looking forward to it," Vasta nodded. "And this is our adventurer, I take it?" "That she is. Now if you'd both just accept her invite and Verbum could stop staring at me like that, we can all go on with our days." "How am I supposed to look at you when you've already changed so much?" he asked, seeing the awakened inclination on his soul, along with all of his attributes that had ballooned in the few days they'd last spoken. "Why are you like this?" "Grit and determination, I guess. Anyway though, just accept and I'll get out of your hair." Ben could still feel the other's eyes on him but ignored it until they accepted, finishing that task and hopefully letting him get everything he'd wanted to from the experience, with time being the only way to tell how well that would work out for him in the end. With that done though, he gave them all his thanks before running off, eager to make the most of his time. He was already materializing souls the second Vasta had joined, an application of non-affinitied magic no matter how bizarre it may have looked, but he'd be able to speed it up all the more once he got to the shop, both for having his jacket to pull mana from along with all of the enchanting he'd be doing. "Oh yeah, that's the stuff," he muttered as he put it on, dealing with the feeling of overfilling his soul in exchange for the power it granted him, with Myriad picking that point to make his presence known. Stolen from its original source, this story is not meant to be on Amazon. Report any sightings. I don't think there's any drug more potent than power, and while I'm wearing this I have it in spades. This is objectively the greatest tool I've ever made. It is not even remotely the air conditioners. At least say my resistance bands or divine potions. Okay, whatever, they can like what they like. For now though, I've got lots of work to go. After boosting his mana with the potion, he was creating over 1,000 souls a second while he wore his jacket and creating enchantments over the various bands on his arms as fast as he could think. He was well on his way to getting his levels, meaning it was time to go back to looking at what he could do for the world instead of himself, with his focus going back to improving the overall quality of mages. A part of him felt a bit bad that he couldn't think of anything more general that could be used to help the warriors of the world too, but once his homunculus circlets were distributed, he didn't know how he could help them grow beyond the potions and weapons he'd already made. Magic was different though. He understood it deeply and already had new ideas of how to help those who used it beyond just the mana bracelets he'd created, looking to his mythic artifact for inspiration. As much as he didn't want to admit it, the archive was a masterpiece, the sort of thing he couldn't replicate no matter the skills and talent he possessed. From speeding up time to recording writings and entire stretches of memory, all while at the same time holding the representation of an ancient and powerful spell that was on par with the one that had brought him to that world, it fully deserved the ranking it had received. As much as it annoyed him, he couldn't replicate it for all it was worth, but he could instead try to mimic a few of the features he desired and in one case even create something beyond it as he tried to get to work on figuring out how to store knowledge within a set of pages. On the surface, the obvious answer was to write on them, but his goal was something more. He wanted to create an item that would pull the user into a mind space and speed up the flow of time for them to read within, adding the effects of various mind skills to make it happen. His unnatural thought speed to give any reader significantly more time, even beyond what the archive could manage, and his unnatural mind too to make up the space. Both of those would be the cores of it, but with them, he planned on adding both his unnatural inspiration and knowledge skills to help the readers learn and retain the information faster. It was basically his attempt to combine the books he'd already written with the circlets he'd already donated to create one greater whole, and he materialized a book he aimed to enchant on, creating a structure filled with complex blends of magic materials of all sorts to try and give it the strength it needed to stand up to all he wanted to do before he began laying the enchantments he envisioned down, feeling them be placed each time but ending with a result that he couldn't make work. That's a little annoying. Okay, I get it, this is going to be a struggle. Why can't I make this work? As he looked at his design, he couldn't see anything fundamentally wrong with it. By all accounts, he believed it should have functioned perfectly, but even as he modified and adjusted what he put down, he kept getting failure after failure, not one of them giving the desired result while he tested them no matter what he did. He knew right from the beginning that making something like that was going to be challenging, but he hadn't expected it to be to that extent. Even when he poured his mana into it to activate it, he felt it taking his power, it just wasn't invoking any effect. It was an outcome he wasn't prepared for, and as hours passed while he struggled, he had to admit the truth. He was well and truly stuck. Well, this sucks, he muttered, thinking he was alone again until Myriad spoke up. Can't get my enchantments to work. Also, are you just unusually free today? You seem pretty available. Yeah. Well, don't worry about it today. I'm reserving my next bit of nonsense for tomorrow. Gonna try and awaken my sacrilege again. Anyway, Ben went on, breaking the silence his god had left hanging there. What do you think? See anything obviously wrong with this? Myriad finally told him, resolving to ignore whatever plans his apostle had for the next day for the sake of his own mental health. You're the best. With nothing else to do in his god's absence, Ben put even more of his focus on creating souls, pushing his limits as far as he thought he could go without hurting himself to create more and more for whatever trickle of experience it would give him in the end, only stopping when his thoughts were filled with the sounds of a different tired god. Nair said after arriving, with Ben nodding in response. I can't make my enchantments work, and I don't know why. It's bothering the hell out of me. As far as I can see, there's no reason for them not to function. Ah? You see the issue? I'm a big boy. Just tell me already. The answer was met with a beat of silence while those thousands of minds that heard it took it in for all it was worth. Yeah, you're right, I didn't like that. Thanks anyway, Nair. I guess that means I can get back to work then. If it was going to work correctly for anyone else, then how it did for him didn't matter, no matter how annoying it might have been. So with that small mystery solved, he began making more, planning to cover as many topics as he could before donating them to the library for whatever benefits they would give. Flying through the sky, Thera by his side while he sat firmly in the cart she was carrying, Ben was doing his best to block out the world around him, instead losing himself in his focus. Now that his attributes, and most importantly, his intelligence, had all leveled up by so much from the potion he drank, he had something he wanted to test once more, just to see if it was possible. Out in the normal world, the area of reality that he lived in and could affect with his own power, he once more wanted to attempt to see if he'd be able to actualize there. It was something he'd already failed at once, but at the same time wasn't willing to give up on yet. Even if he hadn't succeeded at it the last time, it felt like it should have worked, with the only thing missing being either more levels or the mental strength to do it, with the latter being something he'd just gained in spades. Sitting at over 17,000 at the moment, he had to have had one of the highest values of the attribute on the planet, likely only losing to Killy if anyone at that point. Ben didn't actually know how high the knowledge holder stood, but he did know that the amount he had long reached a point he would consider largely useless. As good as it felt to see his values rise, he didn't know if he'd actually be able to feel the difference in his mind at that point, even if it would help him with raising mind skills. Actualization changed that, though. It made intelligence something he'd spend in Myriad's realm to use, and now that he was trying it out in the world, he needed every point he had if he wanted it to work, leaving it only a question of what to try, pulling a vision to his head to see if he could make it happen. Unlike previous attempts, that time his aim was simplicity. He didn't need to try and create something that would capture all of his senses, he just needed to push beyond his current limits, meaning he was ignoring things like smell and taste to exclusively focus on the look and feel of what he wanted, ending with the idea of a small sphere, no bigger than a golf ball and a pure white in color, making it as simple as could be. All that left was trying to force that vision into reality, feeling the same strain on his minds and soul from the unfamiliarity of the attempt that he'd gotten when first awakening the skill by trying to use it in a lower layer of the universe while existence itself fought against him. He had nothing but time thought and kept pressing, feeling the strain slowly get worse while he kept pushing, wanting to be able to say he'd at least given it his best effort until that ceased to be an issue. He felt reality bend to his will as his mind forced itself onto that plane, shaping it as he saw fit. Just as soon as he got it, the sphere vanished, his concentration broken in a way that stopped the will he'd been applying, even if it was an unexpected result. Both in his God's realm and within the Gate network, once he made something it existed no matter how strange a state that might have been, but the same didn't seem to be true there. Just to test it he tried again, feeling how instantly easier the act was for both his level and success, but needed to maintain his will the entire time, fighting against the universe to keep it up and showing him that even if it was possible, it still wasn't going to be easy. But that doesn't matter. This is so freaking great. Despite what he'd thought before he'd first awakened it, there really had been a good reason to try and push the ability's limits to make it grow. Seeing early on that it could be used in tandem with materialization to reduce the mana cost for the act made it tremendously valuable, more than worthy of that bit of work and strain it took to make it possible. Being able to do it within the Gate network was fine, but being able to claim those benefits without limit was even better. Taken from Royal Road, this narrative should be reported if found on Amazon. And there's still more for me to test too, but we're gonna have to wait on this, we're almost there. So, you're ready to cause an international incident? Thera asked, side-eyeing the thing he was forcing to exist in his hands that spoke of his accomplishment while he just smiled back. Don't worry, it will be fine. I'm just gonna cut loose a little bit is all, work out some stress, and maybe if I'm really lucky, finally raise one annoying skill. And with a lovely healer here, I'm pretty sure nobody is going to die either. Gods above. What a worrying thing to hear. It's fine, the sooner you take us down, the sooner this is done and we can go back. Why? Just look at them down there. Already so happy to see us. What Ben was pointing at down below was the sight of the few priests that had noticed him, running into the Church of Aneth in a panic after realizing who was coming. After all, their demigod had tried to kill him, it was time to pay them back for that. Felth was already outside when they landed, out of breath along with the other priests who'd followed him, all of them trying to prepare for whatever was coming for them that time, as Ben jumped out to greet them, wearing his biggest smile. "Friends, it's been so long," he called out. "Why, I haven't interacted with the lovely Church of Aneth since the outsider broke through. Isn't that crazy? When we all share such a tight bond too. How could I leave you all without your favorite guy without even stopping in? What may we do for you, Apostle Ben?" Felth asked while the rest around were looking at him in open fear. Inetha's apostle alone was keeping himself composed regardless of however he may have felt at that moment, looking at the one who'd trapped his son in the infinite hells. Ah, Felth, buddy. Always so professional, always so straight to business. Let's step inside a bit first, talk a little, catch up. He was already walking before they could respond, letting himself into the church to find the statue of Myriad still floating in the air with multiple priests by its side, supplying power to it through a ledge in the ceiling which had once been the church's second floor. Well, gosh dang. Doesn't it look like you've all been doing your best since I've last been around? He laughed. No more unfortunate accidents, I really respect that, you know? All of you doing your best to show proper respect to my God. All of you acting completely appropriately and living within your station. You'd never think that one of you decided to try and murder me while I was busy risking my life to save the world. About that, Felth began, not being allowed another word as Ben went on. It really hurt so much, you know? In a few different senses, really. There I was, trying to close a portal to hell so we all wouldn't die before the second wave. Just think of how embarrassing that would have been. The demons coming through and finding nothing but a ghost planet. And I was working so hard when I had an incredible spear thrown right at me. And I mean incredible, not so much the person who threw it but the item itself. Chef's kiss, which is pretty obvious seeing as how I was the one who made it. There's something very flattering about the idea that my work is of such a good quality that even demigods would want to use it. Having it pointed at me, though? Less incredible. My items hurt. Anyway, it's with all of that in mind that I come here today with two things. A question and an offer. An offer. Now, Felth, get the order right. You should be asking about the question first. What is the question? How many priests of Aneth are currently working here? 22, why? Felth, we both know that wasn't what I was looking to answer next. Go on. Be a good little boy and play your part in the conversation properly. You hear? A sharp intake of breath he wanted to hide. Ben's attitude couldn't help but get to the man as he did what was expected of him. What's your offer? There we go. That wasn't so hard, was it? Ben laughed, dripping with condescension. And as for the offer, well, it's this. As he spoke, Ben pulled 22 necklaces from his ring, each bearing a cubic pendant on them and being tossed at the other apostle's feet. Duel me, every one of you. If you win, I'll sever the connection between our churches. Felth stared at the necklaces on the ground, conflicted. He was being offered a chance to finally break that cursed connection between the two of them, a chance to stop dancing in the palm of Ben's hand, maybe even a chance to kill him if he was lucky enough. All chances he didn't want to give up, only holding himself back out of fear. He'd seen what Ben had done in the duel with his son, and he knew at least of some of his accomplishments, enough to doubt how much of a chance they'd stand in Ben. Hearing all of that while he probed the other's mind, smiled. Of course, I'm sure you have your worries, he told them. I'm sure you're worried about the chance you'd accidentally kill me. I am talking about a duel where I'd be drastically outnumbered, but don't worry, Felth. I don't actually believe you'll be able to scratch me, let alone hurt me. If by some miracle you do manage to land a killing blow, the Church of Myriad won't react. We'll respect the laws of the land here. Ben's words only made the other apostle grind his teeth, but still he went on. And as for the safety of all of you, well, I promise you that not one of you will die in the duel because of me, he said proudly. With how far beneath me you all are, there's practically no risk to yourself. Now, obviously, you'll probably get hurt a bit, but that's another matter entirely. You all worship a war god. I'm sure you can handle a little bit of pain, right? Again, his words only angered those around him, making them forget some of their fear, even as they tried to hold it in. No matter how obnoxious he was, they couldn't let themselves be baited, leaving room for Ben to continue. And when it comes to weapons, well, you don't need to worry about that either. You won't be seeing me use the thing I nearly killed your demigod with or putting up a barrier either, so you all have nothing to be afraid of on those grounds either. Really, there's no loss for you by accepting this. Unless your statue falls while we're out there, Felth told him, feeling like he'd seen where the trick lied, with Ben acting surprised. Oh, that? Well, although it would be a bit disrespectful to Myriad, if we do this then I'll let the statue rest on the ground while we fight, nice and easy, and won't destroy anything as a result. Isn't that kind of me? I'm giving you nothing to worry about here. And what are you looking for if you win? Inetha's apostle asked, with Ben's eyes lighting up at the question. There you go, Felth. Didn't even need me to prompt you this time either. Now, I'm just a little curious about if I'll be able to store something in the statue is all. If I win, you guys let me shove it in there and we see how it works out for all of us. So that was his game. Felth could immediately imagine that whatever Ben was going to try and fit inside of the statue would only raise its value while destroying what little collective wealth that church still had, probably increasing the mana cost to keep it lifted as well. His goal was to financially ruin them even beyond what they'd already gone through. Not that they had any real wealth left to give. Combined with the question of if they'd win at all, it was a risk he wasn't sure he'd be willing to take no matter the reward. But while he hesitated, others within the faith did not, standing by their apostle's side and speaking up. Honored Felth, we must do this. One spoke in firm resolution. For what dignity we have left if nothing else, we can't keep letting this stand. He's right, another said. Not just for us, we need to do this for the church as a whole. This is finally an opportunity to rid ourselves of this blight. We can't let this chance slip through our grasp. No matter how strong he might be, we have numbers on our side. A third told them, not just speaking to Felth but the surrounding priests as a whole. No matter how strong he is, he's just one man. This, right now, is how we mark our names within our church's history. By freeing ourselves of this monster, even if it costs us our lives. I was serious about making sure I don't kill any of you, Ben chimed in, not having expected the surrounding priests to get so passionate and being ignored as they spurred themselves on. They're right, another cried. We can't keep living like this, living in fear of the next time the statue falls and the next time he returns. I'd rather die knowing I tried to save us than keep living with this evil hanging over our heads. It's time we free ourselves from this nightmare. Okay. Seriously, you guys do remember who originally started all of this, don't you? Ignored again, one more walked over to the apostle, looking Felth in the eyes as he spoke. For whatever problems Ather had, he was one of ours. We can't just let him go unavenged. All of you? Felth said, looking like he'd shed tears if his reptilian eyes would allow it. And here I am, meant to be leading you. You're right. All of you are right. No matter the odds, this is our chance to end things. This was always a threat we were going to have to overcome. If not now, then when? We'll do it. We'll take him down here and now. He leaned down and picked up the necklace at his feet. All of the other priests around following suit. All to form a united front against their greatest threat. Not demons nor gods nor monsters beyond the veil, but Ben, who was more than a little conflicted about how smoothly that had gone. I was really expecting I'd need to work them a lot more to make that happen, but whatever. What's done is done. Time to beat up these assholes. He liked to think he didn't have a problem with most of Inetha's priests beyond the god they were connected to, but after hearing not only all of that but how firm each one was in their minds about trying to go for the kill, they were collectively testing his willingness to show mercy. Maybe I'll make this hurt a bit more than planned. After bringing down the statue like he said he would and confirming there was nobody left behind in the church, Ben slipped out with the rest, spending a bit of his mana to seal the doors shut so no one would be able to get back in while he let the priests grab their weapons, all of them holding either spears or staves to match the properties of their god. Spears, earth, and war, Ineth was one of the lucky gods with 3 domains he ruled over, being strongest in those aspects, and it showed in those who directed his faith, with the ones who possessed the right affinities focusing on their magic and those who didn't wielding their spears, leaving Felth as the one most proficient in both. Not that Ben was worried. He was strong. He was so strong that he didn't mind raising their competitive spirits even further with what he did next, looking at all of them prepared to fight as he dragged his foot in the dirt in the middle of them all, making a circle a meter across. There, he told them proudly. I won't leave this once, so it's all on when you lot are feeling ready then. This content has been unlawfully taken from Royal Road. Report any instances of this story if found elsewhere. He didn't need to read the minds of the closer ones to see how ready to kill them they all were. Their faces were more than enough, with Felth calling out, "Call the duel to start already. You'll see your arrogance can only go so far." "Sounds good, Thera, if you would." "I can't believe I'm participating in this," she muttered to herself before calling out for all to hear. "Bring the duel to a start already." That was all they needed. The surrounding priests released their tense muscles to both lunge with and throw their spears along with the magics on their fingers, all directed at their enemy with the sole goal of killing him then and there. Having him surrounded, they still kept their expectations in check. Even in the spots he shouldn't have been able to see them attacking from, they didn't think that any of them were guaranteed to land hits, but Ben deflecting each one by grabbing hold of every attack with his own magic to make them fly past him was beyond their expectations, as was the smug grin he gave them all for it. "Oh, it looks like a few of you dropped your spears. I'll let you guys pick those up real quick. Wouldn't want you feeling like you lost because of a simple mistake." He was doing it specifically to get under their skin, and it was working. They may not have known that he was figuring out how he was being attacked each time by both reading their minds and seeing through their eyes, but that didn't matter. It was an advantage he was happy to use while the attacks continued on, with him making each spell look close as he dominated their earth magic with his own power while countering the spears, dodging out of the way for the ones coming at him from behind while delivering powerful slaps to the ones coming in front, hitting them out of the way with his sheer strength and having a complete hold of the situation, only humiliating them further by not attacking once and doing exactly what he'd said, staying within his circle. In only a few minutes he already felt them getting desperate, with a few of them changing their attacks to get what element of surprise they could. After all, just because they all worshipped an earth god didn't mean they couldn't access other forms of magic, and the few with skills and other affinities began using them in force for whatever surprise they could get, with the answer being none as their minds were being read. Ben ignored the dark spell coming his way, knowing it would be useless, while he instead looked approvingly at one spearman who worked space magic into his form, increasing his reach and speed at the same time by bending the fabric of reality, even if it didn't make any difference in the end. He still knocked it away with brutal efficiency, leaving only a fire mage left to try anything. That one was harder to deal with but still manageable. As the attack came, he raised the dirt at his feet to block, taking the strike with that while he remained unharmed, happy to continue on for as long as they all wanted while the minutes ticked by. "Well?" he asked. "Are you all ready to give up yet? Heck, look at how generous I am. I haven't even hurt any of you despite how clearly outclassed you are. Why not take my little bit of mercy and admit your defeat now?" He didn't want them to give up, but he was willing to extend the offer at least, just so he could say he did, and to his joy, Felth stood firm in his rejection. "No, we've worked too hard to give up now. Even if it costs me my life, we will kill you." Kind of saying the quiet part out loud there, buddy. Not that it matters, I guess, it was clear enough from the get-go. "Still, consider yourselves lucky. I'm a hell of a lot more merciful than you lot are." He could feel them around him, welling the last of their strength with their leader's words, more than one thinking of trying to die if it meant dealing him even a single blow, and lunging as one, dreaming of glorious martyrdom and having it crushed by Ben making his first attack, pulling 44 metal balls from his spatial ring and firing each one with enough speed to pass cleanly through every leg around him. It all happened so fast that many didn't understand why they were falling. One moment they were running to impale him, the next they were on the ground in crippling pain, unable to stand up, let alone walk, as the screams began from some while the rest were looking at him with eyes filled with either fear or murder. Forget moving out of his circle. Ben had barely moved a step, and none were more aware of that than Felth, who wasn't screaming in pain but instead rage and despair. Not just defeated but overwhelmingly so. There were still a few mages firing spells, but Ben handled all of them with ease, forcing the reality to sink in. They'd lost completely and undeniably, not freeing themselves of the monster whose rage they'd provoked, only making their situation worse. "You know, back where I'm from we have this expression about not flying too close to the sun," he told them, sounding almost in sympathy that was only betrayed by the grin on his face. "I'm not going to explain all of the context behind it, but it's tied to the idea that people shouldn't aim for too high above their station or else they're destined to come crashing to the ground. To be honest, I've always thought it was kind of bullshit. You should always aim for more no matter how impossible it might seem, and I've got to say, you all crashed and fell beautifully. I'm genuinely touched by the display. You bastard, Felth spat. I still haven't yielded. Huh, I see. But aside from casting spells, you can't really do anything else to me. Can you? Ben asked. And we've already seen your spells don't work, so you're out of luck there. But tell you what, if you can stop me from putting anything in Myriad's statue, then we'll call it your guys' win. God, I really am so generous, aren't I? You'd never find anyone else with a heart as big as mine. His response only got more screams, but it gave them the motivation they needed. Even if they couldn't kill him, they'd stop him somehow, leaving some of the priests to begin dragging themselves to the church while others tried to put up walls around him to keep him in place, with only Felth seeing the confident look on his face and knowing something was wrong. Still without moving from his spot, Ben pulled something new out of his ring. Something that only he and Thera knew about and recognized. What he had was one end of a miniature gate, with the other end having been in the statue of Myriad since he'd given it to the church all those months ago. He felt Felth trying to fire spells at it to stop him from whatever he was doing, ripping away clumps of earth and pouring all of his power into it only for it to not be enough in the end as Ben held his hand up to the end and wearing a manic smile that only provoked horror in those who saw it, began his unnatural act of materialization, making sure his mana properly took shape within the statue instead of his side of the gate. Ben could still feel space itself warping through it while he compromised with himself, stealing the mana of the priests in his range since it was to try and raise his sacrilege while at the same time training his deep connection, all to get the power he'd need to create exactly what he wanted to. The foreign matter of his home reality. With how much he'd leveled his material manipulation since he'd first done it along with the rule bender skill he'd gained for the first time pulling it off, it was already easier than it had been before, not taking nearly as much mana as atoms came into being and kept growing. Straining space more with each bit, he forced to exist within that incompatible universe until it became too much. When the warping or reality became too great, it broke the statue's gate, severing both the connection between the two as well as his mana from the alien substance, leading to its violent reaction. The sound of the explosion was as loud as the force behind it was powerful, blowing out the church's walls and leading to the total collapse of the building, breaking it down before the priest's horrified eyes while Ben just sadly shook his head. Well darn, ain't that a shame? I really thought that would work, he said in fake disappointment, with Felth not even looking his way. What did you do? Ah, it's a real shame, but I thought the statue might be able to hold an experimental form of matter, Ben sighed. I mean, you've all been praying to it as a representation of my god, right? I thought that would be enough to strengthen it to the point I needed, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. A shame though, a real shame. Still, we can't leave things like this, can we? With his two perfectly functional legs, Ben walked over to the remains of the church before pulling out one final thing from one of his rings. A metal cube, about a meter in size that he poured a bit of mana into to activate with all of the priests watching in despair as it rose to the air. There we go, it wouldn't be the first church of Aneth if it didn't have a statue of Myriad, would it? Although I guess it's not the first church of Aneth anymore. At whatever, you guys will rebuild, I'm sure. Ah, and as a special bonus, this one won't fall, so enjoy that. I'll come back for the original statue bits, as per our original agreement. Okay. I think that's it for me. You guys be well, and remember, you can always count on the Church of Myriad. So, you 100% just awakened your evil inclination, Thera said as they flew off, leaving the ruins of Aneth's church along with the broken and bleeding priests as they went. I honestly thought I was going to get a level of sacrilege just watching that. Ugh, you're right, but that's all I got. Ben groaned now that they were far enough away. I really thought that would do the job of getting me my sacrilege awakening. Man, the fact it didn't suck so much. What's even the point of having evil inclination if it's not going to boost that when I want it? The fact that didn't do the job was honestly crushing. As cathartic as all of that had been for him, on top of letting him test out his combat potential a bit more, he was running out of things he could potentially get away with to awaken it without ending up in prison. I could always murder Felth and Olencia's oracle. He sighed while a part of himself commented on the fact that he was seriously considering both as options. They've both tried to murder me before, it would be fine. I mean, it would probably cause Myriad some issues, but I'm pretty sure I could get him out of it if I try. Should I go back and finish the job? No, not today. Murdering someone for power kind of feels like a slippery slope. I shouldn't be so eager to throw myself down. If I still haven't come up with a solution when I'm down to only 5 or 6 months left until the wave, then I'll give in and do it as a treat to myself. Or maybe I should wait until I awaken deep connection. I'll see whatever comes first and then decide. You look like you're thinking something evil. You know that, right? I know no such thing, Ben told her. And I'm just considering my options. When you put it that way, you also make it sound evil too. Maybe. Would you still love me if I killed someone? Well, you killed Ather not too long ago and I still do, so yes? Hey, I trapped Ather in hell. Whether or not he died in there is his business. Okay. Still probably yes, but at the same time don't go off murdering people willy-nilly, please. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just see what the next few months hold in store, I guess. Fine. Now are you going to tell me whatever this is about? She could see there was something bothering him, both driving him and making him more desperate to grow, and while the invasion was a perfectly good explanation for that, she didn't know if that was all, with Ben only giving her a part of an answer. Stolen from Royal Road. This story should be reported if encountered on Amazon. It's just everything I saw while stuck on the demon world. He shrugged. It just made me realize that if I want to make a difference, I've got to be stronger, and getting to the 3rd tier is a pretty quick path to that. It wasn't the whole answer. He still didn't know how to tell her his complicated feelings about the war they were living through. But it was enough for the moment as they went back to Stonewall to both do what they could with the time they had. Well, that was a mess, Myriad complained first thing that night. That was basically an interfaith incident you just caused. I am willing to defend my case before every god in this world, including Ineth himself. I proposed a duel and they accepted, with the only thing driving me to that point being my attempted murder a few months back combined with earlier acts of mistreatment by the Church of Ineth. It's not my fault Felth and the others lacked imagination about what I might try to store in the statue. You never believed it would be able to hold it. No, but I would have been over the moon if that had somehow managed to work. Plus, as it stands, I've discovered a way to actually use foreign matter production as an attack. Not a good attack since it means making and destroying a minigate, but an attack nonetheless. Whatever, since we have our long-standing issues with that church and Felth agreed to the duel on top of this being your first reaction to Ather trying to kill you, we have been rather firmly told to make sure you end things with that. You've gotten your revenge. Be happy with that. You got it. I am in no way planning on murdering Felth in the next few months if I can't awaken sacrilege by then. You have nothing to worry about. I have nothing but worries. Just go read or actualize or something not completely psychotic while I work tonight. Would you? You got it, buddy. I'm planning on waking up after an hour or two anyway. Since I've got all of the stamina, might as well put it to use to get more work done since I've got plenty still to do. Magic books to make. Mana bracelets to make. Experiments to run and souls to materialize on top of it. I'm pretty swamped. MMH, I'm sure. And on the note of your materializing, has it had any effect yet? I've already gotten my first job level. I'd say that shows I'm on the right track. There's no conceivable way that you've managed enough in the last day to get one entire level. You had to have already been right on the edge of it by the time the rest of the gods quit giving you experience. Ugh. Yeah, I know, but let me believe. The real test is going to be however long this next level takes. I really do need to go all in on my soul production since my mind can't get any stronger at this point. It would help if I can awaken my soul inclination too, but I have no clue how I'm going to do that. I can destroy and be a little evil on demand, but as for souling, well, if all of the souls I've already created won't do the job, then who knows what will. I want to say you'll get there or you won't, but given your track record, I'm comfortable assuming you will. Now if you don't mind? Yeah. Do your boring work? I'll read for a bit. There were still plenty of texts left to go through on the system's design and construction to keep him occupied, and he never knew what might be the driving force that would end with some strike of inspiration, so finishing all of that really was as much of a priority as anything else, creating one more task for him on his long pile of work. Well, who knows, maybe I'll find something handy in all of this. He told himself positively while the hours passed before it was time to get up and back to work. No Ben this morning. Ever since he got back, he'd been constantly busy, driven in a way that seemed more frantic than it had in the past that couldn't help make her worried. with the worst part being that he wasn't telling her everything. She was sure that something he'd seen on the demon's world was the cause, driving those feelings in him and pushing him to do more than he already had. It just felt like there was more beyond that he wasn't letting on, which only made her worry more. Not that I can judge. Even if he's eased up the amount of work I need to do at any hospital, I'm still constantly busy too. Maybe striving for more power really is the right call right now. She understood why he wanted to break through to the third tier to get it too. With the explosive growth of attributes that would come with it, it really was going to be the quickest path to power if one could only get past that impossible wall with her own now before her. As strange as it felt to consider, she was now a proper contender for the third tier as well, and it seemed that both Ben and the gods held their hopes over that fact, no matter how impossible getting there in the next year felt. As incredible as it would have been to break through into being a soul mage, she still had no clue how she was supposed to try and manage it so soon, even with her magic affinity giving it bonuses too. Which really means I need to be trying to raise that too. But how? She was trying to use her life magic in more creative ways, and to incorporate it into the other affinities she used when she could, but there was a reason there were so few in the world who'd been able to cross over the line that divided mortals and gods. It was so hard it wasn't even something one could really get advice about. Her uncle had spent years and years training and building up experience, and she could only assume that Elvet was the same. How was she ever supposed to manage that same level of training in such a short amount of time? Which means I'm going to be asking advice about it later. Great. That just leaves me in the meantime where I'm going to have to get through the day first. Do you have to be here? Sko asked, feeling the weight of Thera's gaze from the side. Yes. Why? I'm supervising. Please, don't mind the implied threat and act however you want. Thera, we really will treat her well while she's with us, Sakhel told her, with both Raelia and Aso nodding along. As agreed, the girl was going to be joining their party for safety's sake, while Thera wasn't around, but that didn't mean she didn't want to see how the first day was going to turn out, since she had the spare bit of time. Just consider me a small tag-along. I just want to see how you're all going to manage for now anyway. Even if they were just on patrol, they'd be building their group dynamic after all, solidifying the way they'd be working together. All Thera wanted to know was that her friend would be able to handle herself, even if she was being a bit overprotective in the process. Still, things seemed like they were going fine. They were able to talk while keeping aware of their surroundings as they filled their roles, something that every community on the planet had to be doing then, ensuring there were always people on watch to handle things if they started to go wrong. MMH, when I'm done here, I really should make quick visits to the surrounding communities to see if they've had any issues yet. I'll do whatever healing I can along the way too, and then... Princess! A spirit cried out. A group of demons is in the area. Would you like us to deal with them, or would you rather handle them yourself? She was about to speak up, caught off guard but thought better of it before she did, moving to talk with her mana instead. How many of them are there? 23. I see. In that case, could you and the others lead them this way for me? We'll handle them. Understood. It wasn't kind, but with that warning, what Thera saw more than anything else was an opportunity. One to see how well her friends would be able to handle themselves without her around, and did nothing to warn them of the coming group, wanting to see how they'd fare for themselves without getting her assistance. Of them, it was Raelia who noticed first, feeling the vibrations in the ground as the group approached them and perking up, her look in the distance being enough to alert the other two in her party, while Aso picked up on it last. Not yet knowing the cues that had become natural for those who'd fought together for so long. In an instant they were moving, both Sko and Raelia taking the front while the two mages stood at the back, with the warrior among the holding for his swords while the shifter changed her form, taking on the shape of a giant snake for what was to come, leaving the last two to prepare their spells. If you come across this story on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen from Royal Road. Please report it. Raelia, I'll keep an eye on Aso for this, so just focus on the front, Sakhel ordered, letting the others know that she'd cover for their newest member so they could fight to their heart's content. Thera, do you mind Dash? Oh, don't mind me, she told them. Act like I'm not even here and do your best. Right? That meant they weren't getting any easy way out of that, but she at least trusted that Thera would help if things went wrong, giving her some comfort as she prepared her spells, being judged the entire time. From the moment the first demon broke through the foliage, Thera was watching, prepared to act if need be but hopeful they'd be able to handle themselves, with Sakhel not letting her down. Being the most powerful member of her party with a magic specialized to take advantage of their environment, she was forcing roots to burst from the ground and ensnaring the demons in her grasp as they tried to attack, locking them in place, even as they fought to tear themselves away, giving room for the others to strike. While Sko slashed, Rayleigh bit into them, sinking in her sharp fangs and tearing away what she could while blood poured into the dirt. The hail of violence quick and brutal while the demons attacked how they could. Even while held they fought against both their chains and attackers, ripping out plants that bound them to lash out with tooth and claw before being restrained once more, with Aso doing her best to contribute to the fight when it happened. With fire magic being her best avenue for attack, it was difficult to use in tandem with someone whose spells were susceptible to burning, but anytime a demon broke free it was fair game. Their screams coming out while their flesh burned and while not killing them outright, managed to be enough to distract them to let the frontline fighters manage. All of it was quick and chaotic, but despite everything happening in those first few moments, the demons didn't end there. Those ones had to either possess true intelligence or else be on the edge of it, and with that came a certain ability to react beyond pure instinct, with some at the back using their magic to help them, not by attacking but instead directing it to their own fallen kin, filling them with a false life as the dead moved once more to attack, acting as nothing but puppets but meaning that their numbers wouldn't go down until those sources of mana were extinguished like anything else, prolonging the battle even more while Thera watched in interest. It was unlikely the demons had an awakened form of their innate minor soul magic, which meant the ones attacking had to have gained proper death magic as well. A difficult task given how closely related the two skills were, but not impossible considering her own experience with Charm and Dark, and seeing how they fought close up was an interesting reference for her. She knew already that life and death were closely related, and now that her life magic was at the 9th awakened level, that meant she could take what she saw for inspiration, already feeling ideas forming in her head of areas she could try and grow in. She still struggled with controlling homunculi through her mana alone, and she never even tried to use the Dual Affinity spell that was Golem creation, but watching that, it occurred to her that any level of corpse control fit into the same category as those other two as well. All of it was filling empty targets with false will and life, a powerful avenue depending on how it was used that made her examine areas of her training she was lacking in herself that could be worth it to try and improve on as she reflected over the limited knowledge she already had. Another thing to try and get some advice on, even if the chance to do that would have to wait. They were all panting by the end, but eventually Satchel's party killed the last of the demons wielding a death magic, letting the corpses that still held some amount of form collapse back to the ground with the victors going with them, feeling the exhaustion of it all. "Good. It looks like I'm not going to have to worry about you altogether," Thera said happily, pleased to see there were no major issues. "In that case, I guess I can leave you guys to it." "I mean, you could worry a tiny bit," Aso said, just as tired as the rest. "That sucked. I'm sure it did, but now I need to see if there's any damage to any of the villages they may have passed on the way. I don't think there's anything else, but make sure you properly report this when you get back." They all already knew, but Thera was already flying off before they could say it, feeling the weight of whatever work was going to fall on her while she did her rounds. Late into the evening, Thera opened the door to her uncle's shop, letting herself in and making her way through to one of the mini gates it held, finding Ben and all of his clones hard at work when she did. "You know, if you're going to run off before I wake up, you should at least try and be home in the evening," she teased, drawing his attention away from the things he was making. "Ah, sorry. I've been a bit absorbed. Rough day." "You could say that. It didn't get into town, but we had a group of demons attack while I was watching Satchel's party, and then when I went to see some of the areas they had to have come from, I found a village almost completely destroyed, so it's been a few hours of regrowing limbs and building new houses for them. It's been rough. Sorry. I'll come home now and make something for dinner. Give me a sec to get these things away." "No, it's fine. I was actually going to ask for your help with a couple other things if you don't mind." "Hit me, what do you need?" "Pretty much everything you know about life and death magic if I'm supposed to awaken this skill," she sighed. "With a special focus on homunculi, golems, and empowering corpses too. If I need to spend a week or two in your head, well, I'll somehow manage to keep my sanity." "Okay. I don't think you needed to add that last bit, but give me a second. I can give you another option on top of those lessons too." Holding his hands in front of them, He wrinkled his brow in concentration as he tried to materialize, ending with a pile of dust falling through his fingers. And that was? Air. It was supposed to be a handy tool for you to enjoy, but it looks like trying to lay down the enchantments while I materialized them was a little too much. Give me a minute. I'm pretty sure I can make this work. She watched as more and more dust fell through his fingers as whatever he was trying to do continued to fail until it eventually didn't, leaving a book to appear in his hands while he raised them up to cheer. Middle Legendary. This is a good day indeed. And it does. A similar thing to the archive. I've actually already donated a bunch of these to the library, but the one I just made you is on another scale. Use this and you'll be able to find information on everything about your various magics I think is useful, from core spells to how they intersect with each other. Use this and you'll have all of the time in the world to read. Of course, I can still pull your mind into my head if you'd prefer. Well, I'll at least test this out first. Thanks, Ben. Unable to hide her worry, she took the offered book and poured a bit of her mana into it, feeling it work as intended with her mind being dragged in, finding a largely empty space with a chair and a table along with a few hundred books to read. Since none of it was actually real, she questioned the need for a place to sit but intended to take advantage of it anyway as she began scanning the shelves, pulling away books on the relevant topics she'd asked for before sitting down for what was certain to feel like hours and hours of reading. Man, work really never ends, does it? If you want it to, you really need to stop making such crazy things, Thera told him. At least it will be some good practice for me too. It seemed that arrangements had been quick for one of his inventions, with plans to have more of the tool he'd made for his teacher produced and given to the awakened warriors of the world set up so soon after their first production and leading them through one of the gates to the untamed lands for all of the free biomass around to take advantage of. Meat was more efficient, but it was also a commodity in war times, something not so easy to waste when there was a world to feed, leading to that boost in difficulty for Thera while they went to meet the gathered crowd. Across the planet, and largely due to the summoning that had brought Ben to the world, there were hundreds with awakened combat skills who could grow more powerful when not limited by having only a singular body, with him getting to see plenty of humans in the gathered group as well, thought only caring about a few as he made a beeline to the ones he'd see the most. Well, Mr. Benjamin, we meet again. Jake laughed amidst the crowd. What zany thing have you done in the last couple days to get a gathering like this? Just came up with a handy tool to help people escape the limits of a single body. More important though, why are you all here? Don't you have a lot more to be doing? He only needed to help both Amy and Will given the skills they had, but not only was he seeing Jake, Steph, and Yuzu, but also the two older mages who acted as both teachers and guardians, Yuliel and Vasta. Got a heads up from a knowledge god saying we should come grab lessons from you. His friend shrugged. Did you not hear about it? No. Myriad. He was already being generous by only asking to get a glimpse of the world's mythic items for that bit of work, but getting extra dumped on him was an annoyance, even if it was for people he cared about. His god said, sounding exhausted. Fended but okay. Steph too? Okay, sounds good. Just let it be known that if I traumatize any of you, I plan on taking no responsibility. Aw, come on man. How bad can it be? I've already put up with years of lessons by now. I'm a veteran at learning, through and through. It looked like Jake's teachers had some strong comments on that idea but kept them to themselves while Ben looked around. Okay. I was told I'm helping the lot of you brush up on your magic lessons, so take a seat and let's get started. Steph, you want some free theory classes from the most well-read guy on the planet. What was that about traumatizing us? Basically not going to happen. Tell me when you're done and I'll let you out. MMH. Giving a cautious okay. Alright squad. Get ready to be educated then. He created a mental space for them and pulled the group into his mind, using the effects of hive mind to improve the quality of their learning before going to look at the rest of them, finding Thera's eyes looking at him questioningly. Yes. Benjamin. That. On Earth, Ben is typically the short form of that name, but my parents' philosophy was just to name me what they intended to call me. It's why my brother was named Mark instead of Marcus too. He watched her mouth the name a couple times to herself before ultimately shaking her head, while Amy held back a chuckle, trying to focus on what they were there for. So should we get started then? Plenty of people to get through from the looks of it. Ah, we'll give it 2 minutes, we have our first dropout. Among the dazed sitting on the ground, Jake gasped, freed from Ben's mind after finally tapping out and looking all the worst for it. You were right, that was traumatizing. How long was I in your head? Barely even the equivalent of a full day, you're fine. A day straight of learning? No wonder I have a headache. Ugh, how do you know so much? Mind skills are fun, and taking advantage of the library for all it was worth was satisfying. I still need to finish the surrounding buildings too, but one day I'll master them all. And then I'll just need to get the basement somehow, but that's a future problem. A distant one from all accounts. It seemed the gods really didn't want him getting free rein in their meaning. That was yet another problem to somehow overcome in the future, but for the time he had other things to focus on, with the second person tapping out of his thoughts. Okay, I've learned enough, so let's never do that again, Steph said the moment she was freed. What sort of maniac even created a spell like ossification? This novel is published on a different platform. Support the original author by finding the official source. Ah, that one's a Ben original, he happily admitted. Thera won't try it though. She says it feels too unethical. At least petrification is reversible if I mess up on it, his girlfriend told him. Converting a person's entire body to bone without a way of undoing it is messed up no matter how you cut it. Okay, we'll agree to disagree. For now though, it looks like we have our third one coming out. Yuliel opened her eyes, looking a lot more calm compared to the other two until she turned her head to see who was left. Damn it, not only did I not last as long as Vasta, but I couldn't even hold out as much as Yuzu? Now that's embarrassing. Third's a respectable place, you did a lot better than Jake at least. How much better? She doesn't need to know that. 7 times. Both his attempts to silence Ben and his poor holdout got Jake a glare, with his teacher speaking up. You get an hour break and then you're doing that again. You should be able to feel what a good resource that is with all of the new spell information in your head. You aren't letting it go to waste. This is tyranny. And something you can argue with your other teacher because she's coming out next. Enjoy. Looking around like the one before, Vasta wore a gloating smile when she saw Yuliel awake before her until she saw the last to take advantage of his mind. I lost to Yuzu? Were you all having a competition in there? Thera asked from the side after hearing the last two, with Ben answering. Just them. Now on to whenever Yuzu finishes up. He could have moved on to the rest of his work while doing it but wanted to wait it out given he expected her to run out of steam in a few more seconds, not having expected entire real-world minutes to pass while he kept up his lessons for her until she eventually gave in like the rest. And we have our winner, he cheered, materializing a small crown on her head after having gotten invested in how it would turn out. Let's give her a round of applause, folks. Didn't she work hard, lasting a grand total of nearly 30 straight days in my head? That was something, she told him diplomatically, suddenly having a lot more sympathy for whatever lessons Zilly had gone through with him. What matters is we all got something out of this. Now, Yuliel and Vasta, since you're here, do you mind helping direct the crowd, and I'll start with Amy and Will. Which of you guys wants to go first? I will, Amy volunteered. What do you need me to do? First put on this, Ben told her as he handed over a circlet. Just activate the enchantments and we'll go from there. He felt her mind split when she did as he asked and watched her flinch as he modified them on the fly, increasing the amount each time until it went beyond what he thought she'd be able to handle comfortably. All right, Thera. Looks like she's getting 5. Sounds good. Amy, give me your hand. This will only sting a bit. Quickly cutting across her palm, Thera collected her blood and began growing the homunculi for a minute before pausing in thought to look at the other girl. I should probably ask to be sure, but would you be uncomfortable with everyone here seeing you naked? Yes. You can pretty safely assume yes. Ben hasn't seemed to mind any time I've made him homunculi, so I wasn't sure if that was a human thing or a him thing, she said with a shrug before raising a wall of dirt around the small area she was directing the clone's growth. Glad I double-checked. In that case, she'll need something for them to wear. Ben? Yeah. Coming up. He materialized 5 simple outfits in her sizes before handing them over to Amy. getting a suspicious look in return. These look like they're going to fit way too well. You're talking to a master craftsman. Sorry, but I can eyeball a difference in micrometers. Creating you an outfit that will fit is nothing. She decided that whatever the answer was, she didn't really want to know anything he might have seen while probing their minds in the past, and moved to go into the enclosure to dress her clones, being stopped by Ben as he handed her 5 new circlets. This is the tool you'll need to control them. It should make things easier to get them dressed. Just put it on each of them and run your mana through yours. You'll get a distance of 8 meters in any direction. Getting a nod in thanks, she went off to do exactly that, letting Thera move on to Will next. I'd also prefer not to expose my dangly bits, thanks. Understood. Ben's just the weird one again. Hey, what do I care? They aren't me. Aren't they? Steph muttered as she watched Amy walk out with 5 perfect replicas, only able to tell who the original was from the difference in outfits. Not in any way that matters. Now go on already, and just remember, when you're using them you won't be able to direct any mana through them, so no augmentations. They're also alive, so make sure you feed them and take care of their other biological needs. Will nodded while he slipped inside with the clothing Ben handed him to meet the 6 he had being made, while Amy stood around, looking almost ill. This is going to take some getting used to, she said in one voice, and jumping a little at that fact. No, more than a little, this is weird as hell. Ben, how do you live like this? It's convenient, he shrugged. And a good way to train your skills more, especially for you. It won't exactly help you out with your augmentations, but for your combat and other skills, you're going to see a few levels coming your way after getting some good use out of them, especially in the field. Slay a swath of demons by yourself and the experience is going to come pouring in. Doesn't change that I'm going to get motion sick trying to process the sights of a dozen eyes. The ingratitude. Jake shook his head, his own eyes gleaming with everything he was seeing. Ignore her, Ben. I'm more than willing to suffer any sort of motion sickness if you'd make me a couple too. You're a mage and they aren't magic compatible, I already said. No forcing any mana through the connection. Could not matter less to me. Let me get my hands on a couple and I'll finally have the leeway to learn some swordsmanship too. Come on. Is there any greater romance than a magic swordsman? He was about to give in. It wasn't like it would matter if they made him some once they were done with everyone else, and if it would help Jake gain some more skills, then it really would be worth it, but Yuliel spoke up before he could. If you want them, then the only way of getting them is spending a week taking lessons in his head. The Archmage told her student. Prove it's worth it, and then you can enjoy the benefits of a bit more flexibility. That left him looking well and truly torn, and his eyes turned to Ben, hoping his friend would help cheat him through it, only to be denied. If you agree, then I'm actually making you do it. The more spells you understand the theory of, the better equipped you are to survive in the long run. Ugh, fine. Just let me have a couple breaks between days, he pleaded. You're going to be here all day. I can enjoy an hour off in between everything. That's acceptable. His teacher nodded, and with the agreement made he sat down again, letting Ben once more pull in his mind while his eyes regarded both Yuliel and Vasta. So, you actually going to let him use these for what he wants? Of course, Yuliel nodded. This works out perfectly. As long as he can handle 3 of them, then we can have one taking lessons from me, one from her, his main body getting practical experience, and then whatever's left can go towards his silly desire for swordsmanship. If he can handle 4 or more, we really should have one devoted to independent study, Vasta pointed out. A good point. Well, we'll see how many he can handle. The more there are, the better for him in the long run. With his friend's fate sealed, Ben did his best to continue giving him lessons while getting the other warriors around equipped while the rest of the day wore on. So, things went smoothly then? Myriad asked him, with Ben shrugging in return. Enough at least. We got both the terrestrial and aquatic groups done, and despite contributing to Jake's future suffering, I've got no complaints. So when do I get to have my fun? You'll just have to wait a bit. This first month is still going to be a major clearing stage for anyone who uses a mythic item while we try to cull more of the numbers that got through. After that, the wielders will be getting some small breaks for you to bother them. Lame but fine. So in that case, what should I do now? Anything you can, I suppose. Why? No matter how hard I work, I only have so many hours in the day to work on raising my skills, and I'm still stuck seeing if I'll get anywhere trying to complete my job, or if I'm really stuck in it forever, but none of that is a real load on me. I need new things to fill my time. What? Are your current projects not impossible enough? I'm making progress for both the summoning spell and Onyx, but I have months to fill. I need something more, especially when considering the fact that finding new things to enchant will also push my connect a bit. I need those levels as soon as possible, so I need to do my best here. I don't know what to tell you, Ben. What you've made since getting back really is already more than enough. I'd say if you just keep trying to push out legendary items, that will already help you plenty. Sure, but I want to do more. Come on, man. Isn't there something the world needs I can work on? The only things the planet needs is to clear out the demons, prepare for the next group to come, and maybe get some more food along the way. More food. We've already got demons ravaging some of our larger farming areas. We're keeping up a bit thanks to the Dryads, but it's a problem. If things keep up, we can expect some shortages by the third wave, and starving armies don't make for a strong fighting force. Okay. I'll think on it. He didn't have any idea what he could do for any of that, but it all gave him something he could work towards on the side, with some of his minds immediately beginning to fiddle with those problems, trying to find a way to solve them and break through. The first two were admittedly already things he'd consider, but seeing as how his plan for the third wave until that point was to awaken his two skills and somehow kill Own, it didn't hurt to start working on alternatives, even if he believed that anything else would ultimately be pointless. But food? Huh? I haven't seen any issues yet, but that's going to be a problem. I've already awakened plenty of Dryads and a few others on the world with plant magic, but without something more that can only go so far. It wouldn't be practical for me to set up the enchantments I have on my greenhouses at a scale to feed the world, so what then? This might be a bit too far out of my specialty, but oh well, it doesn't hurt to consider. While his wheels turned, Myriad went on, sounding tired the entire time. Really, just focus on your goals, Ben. Don't stretch yourself out too far. This would be the worst time for you to burn out. I'll take a day off in a month or two to be on the safe side, but for now I've got to do everything I can. Speaking off, that should be enough for me tonight. Gotta get back to work. You literally just got here. Are you doing this to spite me for telling you not to burn out? No, but time is limited and I've got to make the most of it. You're looking at someone with nearly 5,000 points to their stamina. Man, not sleeping much isn't gonna kill me. Stolen story. Please report. No, but it's going to worry both me and your lover. Thera has been noticing that you seem a bit more impatient in your desire to grow. Yeah, I know I need to talk to her about that. It's on my to-do list. I'm sure. Maybe consider bumping it up a few spots then. I know. I'll tell her my worries when there's a good chance. For now though, off to make things. Would it be crazy of me to put a mini-gate between the shop and home for the few minutes of time it would save me? Minutes add up in the long run. Okay, not today, but putting that in my back pocket for future consideration. For now though, time to work. He was already pulling mana into himself and creating new souls, feeling both the strain and the payoff at the same time, with notifications filling his head after the first few hours of it. If only a few of my other levels would come this easily, he muttered, putting down his hammer to take a look at his card. I guess soul expansion is actually raising pretty slowly considering the speeds my other first-tier soul skills have grown at, but it would be nice if all of the millions I've created would be enough to get me to awaken my stupid soul inclination already. I just want those bonuses on deep connection. He knew he shouldn't be so impatient when it hadn't been 2 weeks since his last level, but he was feeling the weight of his own expectations. Which isn't helpful. I can only work as hard as I can. Adding extra stress isn't going to make things better. Let's see, after I clear out my job options, I have a couple extra tricks I can pull too. But, no, this is still not helping. Change of pace time. How would I feed the world if I needed to? Facing the problem of food shortages his god had presented him with was preferable to whatever stress his rush was putting him under, and he dedicated most of his spare thoughts there while he worked, seeing what he could think of. The question of how he would feed the world was actually an easy one. If he was one of the gods of the world, then he would have made sure the people had begun preserving as much food as they could the moment the prophet gods had made their prediction, and tossed it all into time-enchanted chests to keep it fresh even longer. But seeing as how that didn't happen and he couldn't go back in time, that left the question of what could actually be done, with the problem constantly coming back to a matter of scale. Feeding a village he could handle, maybe even a town or a city if push came to shove, but a world? An entire planet of people who'd need to be fed while monsters ravaged their lands for any bit of biomass they could sink their teeth into? That was a whole other problem with no easy answer. He couldn't just set up greenhouses enchanted to the gills. That would take up every bit of time he had until the third wave came down. In the same way, he couldn't do much else either. He couldn't breed better crops or livestock, that was a task for Vividus if anyone, and he couldn't awaken more plant mages unless they'd made it to the 8th level through their own efforts first. Something that was going to be harder and harder to accomplish given that he'd already done it for so many of them. Even on the optimistic end, if 10 or 20 more could be awakened in the next few months, it still wouldn't be enough to really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. So where does that leave me? He sighed before materializing a handful of seeds. I can create the edible portion of that if I really need to, and there's no reason that demons can't be eaten after they're killed. But, wait, there's an idea worth pursuing. Not the consumption of their foes, but instead the first as Ben looked at the seeds he'd brought forth from pure mana, with every act of materialization ultimately being inspired by one singular event in his life. The dead god's trial, back where he'd learned it was even possible to materialize with unflavored mana, and the specific thing that had led to that discovery. Namely, the food it would provide him. He would never forget that awful bread-like stuff he'd been forced to down for months, but the flavor wasn't the point. The result was, he'd already seen that it was possible for a structure, a tool, to materialize. Who was to say that he couldn't make something the same? There were issues with that idea, of course, a lot of them. Even if he remembered the portion of the tower's enchantments that seemed to do it, he didn't know how to apply it to his own work, along with the issue of power and quantity. He didn't know how much mana the tower spent on feeding its occupants, and he didn't know the cost of it, but that didn't matter. What did matter was that he knew it was possible, meaning he knew it was something he could aim for. If I could make a tool that could pull this off in large enough quantities, then I could make a lot without much trouble. Hell, I could outsource most of the work for the tool itself and focus on the enchantments alone, meaning I could probably make thousands without losing too much time. Okay, interesting thought, but how would I do it? Obviously, I wouldn't start off by trying to materialize food. That would be way too much work, so I'll aim to create something simpler and make something that would materialize iron. Okay, that's a start, so all that leaves is the design itself. How hard can it be? So this is impossible. It hurt to admit, but even after working through that day and night and on into the next from there, he still couldn't figure out how to build an enchantment that would be able to materialize mana once power was poured into it. The blow being all the greater since he knew a god he hated had pulled that very thing off. There was no real way for Ben to know how Galwax had achieved it, both thanks to that god's death along with his trial being trapped in some higher layer of reality, but the fact he couldn't do the same did nothing but eat at him, with the question only digging at his mind. It all came down to doing something more than just constructing the proper shape of enchantment by utilizing any magics and skills he could. What he was failing at was something he didn't know how to do to begin with, encoding raw knowledge into his designs. When he or anyone materialized, what they were doing was applying their understanding of the material itself and forcing that understanding onto the universe, something he didn't know how to replicate through raw magic alone. He couldn't attach one of his minds to a machine permanently to make it happen, leaving him with no other paths to follow. And I'm not even really sure if what Galwax did was actually encoding knowledge. He sighed. This was a god of magic, maybe he was able to view the act of materialization in a way I simply can't. I can imagine there probably is a way to move mana to get what I want that doesn't require any understanding of the element itself, but without being able to view materialization on the atomic scale, I have no way to do it myself. Ugh. This sucks so freaking much. Having to admit that he couldn't replicate something that God had pulled off couldn't help but irk him, but if he had to be honest with himself, that wasn't the only thing worsening his mood. Really, it was a combination, all working in tandem to annoy him. Even though it had only been a couple of days, Ben still hadn't gotten another level to his job. Thinking he would so soon was beyond unreasonable too. He knew that, but his impatience was not so easily shaken when he wanted to see results. Results he also wasn't getting in his crafting. He'd been making things as usual, even through his experimentation, but he was once more struggling to pass a limit. He may have raised his jacket to the high end of legendary, but he hadn't been able to pull it off again since. It was another thing he knew was unreasonable to hope for. He'd done it once, but hoping to do it consistently at that point just wasn't realistic. It was rare enough for anyone to be able to consistently make legendary items even at the low end, but neither his crafting or enchanting had reached their 9th levels either. He still had room to grow there too. And by all accounts, I'm a once-in-a-millennia genius for being able to make any legendary items in the first place. He reminded himself, trying to force some positivity. Everything is coming down to my own impatience. I still have months to grow. If finishing all of my jobs doesn't end up being enough, then I'll come up with other options to improve too. It's not like I can't think of any, so it would just be a matter of putting them into practice along with how potentially insane some of them might be. This is fine, I have time. What's got you muttering to yourself this time? Falk asked as he stepped through the mini-gate, hearing only the tail end of it, which immediately ceased to matter the second he properly looked at Ben. And what in all the hells are you doing? Stolen story. Please report. Trying to figure out how to make an enchantment that can materialize. Why? No, not that, you blasted maniac. I'm talking about the things all around you. Huh? Oh, right, I guess I kinda skimmed past it when I saw you before, but I can materialize souls now, it's a whole thing. Well, unskim it. I didn't take a good look at you the last time I saw you, but all of those new skills on ya, along with new awakened ones. You've been busy. Soul source, I take it? The system saying, you've become a source of souls in the universe. Great minds think alike, that was my exact interpretation too. It also gives incredible experience when paired with any soul-related job. Growing it isn't exactly a priority, but it's getting to see a lot of use. Alright, that's nice and all, but given my niece ain't here yet, tell me what happened to get you to this state. Empty skies. Being able to see your growth firsthand instead of just hearing it really is a whole other experience. Fine. I'll make it quick though. He was constantly needing to catch people up with what he'd gone through during the second wave. What was once more? He told Falk about what he'd been through, the skills he'd gained and grown, the jobs he'd unlocked, and how he was trying to break out of the one he was currently on, even if he kept a few details of World Killer to himself. While he was sure the gods knew the name of the job he was under by now, it was likely they viewed it as him having found a particularly hard third-tier one, since the information available through the eyes of the soul mages didn't say the types of bonuses that were applied. He didn't want the larger group of divinities to know that he was enjoying fourth-tier bonuses. By the end of it all, his teacher only shook his head. The way you use the status and job systems just ain't normal, you know that? You're going to focus on that instead of my horrific kidnapping? It's not the first time someone's kidnapped you, and it won't be the last. It damn well better be the last. I am genuinely powerful right now. I don't want to imagine the sort of being capable of kidnapping me. Ha, the tragedy of poor luck. Either way, what matters is that you're safe. Now, what were you mumbling about before? When I came in, it sounded like you were stressed about something. That. I'm feeling the limitations of the time we have left. There was almost as much between the first and second as there was the second and third, but it felt like so much less. Even if he did all he could, it was never going to feel like enough, with his teacher having no answers for him. Even if Falk didn't feel the same weight to personally handle things, he felt the need to do what he could with the time he had, creating a crushing amount of responsibility to deal with. In the end, the Yeti placed a comforting hand on his apprentice's shoulder, not able to say anything that could make it better, but at least being there. It doesn't matter what you can or can't do, boy, so long as you do your best. Anything else is asking too much. Don't worry. My best really is all I ever do. Maybe you should aim for a little less than that, actually. Falk laughed. Be ashamed to work yourself to death early. If we survive this, then I'm going to start searching for some way to achieve immortality. With everything I've done, I think I deserve to live forever. Ha! Good to have goals. The conversation only broke with the sounds of the door opening. Thera poking her head in. Am I interrupting? Course not, Falk told her. Come in already. Now that you're here, we can head out. And where exactly are we going? Not leaving it in your note. Are you trying to act as mysterious as your apprentice? I was in a rush. It's just going to be for a couple days, but the long and short of it is that I want the two of you joining me for a bit of an important meeting. What sort? Ben asked, his curiosity piqued. The stressful sort. I'm dragging you with me to see the other third-tier skill holders.